Commissioners meeting, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I apologize for the late start. The Board of Commissioners had executive session, and we also were just looking over the minutes. We have the approval of the minutes from March 14th and March 28th. However, it appears that there are some issues with the March 14th minutes still. Apparently, it's been difficult to extract from the video the actual motions, seconds, and tallies. We're still in the process of hiring a new secretary and also bringing up a new person to do that temporarily. So I would suggest on the March 14th minutes that we table those to review those one more time.
Move to table.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any commissioner comment? Any public comment?
Is somebody going to give the people writing it what we think the discrepancy is?
Well, I think what we need to do is, the minutes have been floated back to us for comment, and not all of us have had a chance to go over the minutes. I think we'll just make a concerted effort to make sure we do that. I certainly have gone through them a few times, and I had submitted my comments, but I think even I can't recall everything that happened on March 14th.
Why don't I make every
So
motion
anyway,
you second?
at this
That's
point, we'll
it.
vote on the
Swing
tabling.
nickel, swing the nickel, okay?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And that was made by Hank Mahoney and seconded by Bill Spengler.
Commissioners.
Commissioners. Hank, I'm going to make every motion. You second. It'll be real easy. We'll never have another quarrel on a motion in a second.
Thank you.
What?
Okay.
Then
Do we
don't
have
vote for it.
Do we have a motion to approve the March 28th minutes?
I move the approval of the March 28th minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Commissioner comment? Okay, hearing none. Any public comment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh.
Yes.
We tabled that, so you'll be able to comment on that at the next meeting. Okay, that motion carries 7-0. That was moved by Commissioner Spengler and second by Commissioner Mahoney. The Board of Commissioners met on March 30th at 6 p.m. to address personnel matters. All commissioners were present with the exception of Commissioner Mahoney. And just prior to this public meeting on Monday, April 11th, all commissioners were present for an executive session and matters of personnel and litigation were discussed. Item number 4, we were scheduled to have a public hearing on ordinance 2011-12, amending Chapter 226, the rental housing ordinance. I believe Solicitor John Rice has a comment on this.
It was advertised for hearing tonight. It's my recommendation that you table this. There's a couple, we were amending, if you recall, the ordinance which we amended in December, and then we did the zoning amendment to take student housing out of it. And this was really a cleanup item, but there's some more cleanup that needs to occur. And what I would suggest is that you table this, and I will re-advertise this for your second meeting in May.
Move the table.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any commissioner comment?
John, when you're looking into that, look at the Student Housing Appeal Board also, because that there's no need for anymore.
Well, there's still,
Was it rental housing or student housing?
it's rental housing. I mean, in effect, it became a student housing appeal board, but you're still going to have, because of the licensing that you have in that chapter, you're still going to have some possible appeals.
Okay.
If a license doesn't get granted or gets pulled for whatever reason, unrelated to whether or not students are there. So you still need to have that mechanism, but there's some other parts of that that need to be cleaned up, and we'll take care of that between now and your second meeting in May.
Thank you.
Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. It was moved by Commissioner Spengler and second by Commissioner Mahoney. We have a discussion for the proposed structure of the open space plan update. Commissioner, I believe, Commissioner Schaefer, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, this is, as you recall, we have an effort moving forward to update our open space plan. Our current plan dates back to 1991. And we are applying for some DCNR funding to fund that update. And this recommendation came out of our Open Space Committee, and it is a recommendation for the makeup and structure of the commission, of a big commission that should work on this project. It also includes a tentative schedule, which looks out 18 months. This project should be completed within 18 months. The basic structure is that the whole process will be led by a steering committee, a smaller steering committee that would be made up of 9 members, 2 co-chairs, 2 representatives from the Open Space Committee, 2 representatives from the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, a representative from Parks and Rec, a representative from Planning, and a representative from EAC. The recommendation is that this board appoint the 2 co-chairs, but that for the other positions, the actual boards appoint their own designees. And then there would be a larger stakeholder committee, which would be as big as many volunteers we get. I'm not going to go ahead and list all of these groups, but it's the many groups in Radnor Township that may have an interest in participating in this, from government boards to private institutions to our nonprofits, et cetera. And that would be kind of by invitation, or if anybody wants to participate, they can go ahead and put their name in, including members of the public who aren't associated with any group can put their name in and participate. And then the tentative calendar starts in April and goes all the way through next summer, summer 12, and involves a lot of work steering by the steering committee and then occasional meetings by this larger group. And the group foresees that the larger group will be broken into subgroups to work on chapters. For instance, the chapter on institutions or institutional land will probably have some of our representatives from our institutions giving input to that chapter. So that is the recommendation for the process and the makeup of the group. I'm not even sure if we need a resolution on this or if how that...
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first question is, what's the logic of private golf clubs being on the list of a stakeholder?
It's an institution. I think the thinking was to have a discussion about if those change hands, what the future of those organizations. I mean, those are some of our largest pieces of open space. And if they cease to be golf courses, which is entirely possible, do we want to have a section in our zoning code that would address that? Do we want to have guidance in our plan that would speak to what would happen to one of those large swaths of open space should it cease to be a golf course?
And the steering committee seems a little skewed, and maybe it's intentionally so, but of the 9 members, 4 of them come from the Open Space Committee because the 2 co-chairs come from the Open Space Committee. There's 2 additional representatives.
Yeah, well, it's an open space plan,
Right.
so it makes sense to me.
Right.
But
if you want balance,
well, if you have other committees that you'd like represented, shoot away, and we can certainly add to that group.
but you've got a large enough stakeholder committee below, which I think will make it extraordinarily cumbersome.
Well, and that is the thinking behind having a smaller steering committee, especially when you are working with a paid consultant, which this group anticipates doing. You really need a smaller steering committee so that you don't start having, 50 people calling the consultant.
I think I don't know that you need to enlarge the steering committee, but I think you may want to just pull one open space committee member off, but that's, something to think about.
I would also agree with that. Since some of the activity of this committee will be centered around, I would imagine would result in drafting of ordinances to protect open space and drive open space and whatnot. It might be helpful to see more than one representative from the Planning Commission on the committee.
Okay.
I also agree that this should be done by resolution by the Board of Commissioners. From this point on, I think all committees that are formed should be done by public vote and by resolution. So we have a very clear, clean start to any of the work that we do. But otherwise, I think it's a great idea, and I commend you on putting this, getting this group together to do this.
So you suggested 2 representatives from Planning Commission. Kevin, you suggested taking one away from the open space to just have one representative from open space?
Yeah, maybe swap one out for the planning commission
Okay.
person. I think 9's a lot, but that's,
Do you have any other, does anyone have any other suggestions about who they'd like to see on that steering committee?
I don't think you need 2 if you get one person from the planning commission to volunteer, I think that's enough.
I mean, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
The steering committee is a lot of work, so getting someone to volunteer for these things is not.
I don't have a strong feeling one way, but the existing form seems fine to me.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we'll go ahead and bring this forward as a resolution at the next meeting and vote on it then.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment on that discussion item?
Martin Heldring, 305 Audubon Avenue. I can imagine the end result of this committee could go in a number of different directions. Buying more open land, selling open land. I was surprised that there wasn't someone with some financial background on this. It struck me, regardless of all the other interests that the people in the committee might have, that if I were sitting at my kitchen table and my son came and said, I'd like a car, and I sent him off to do research on buying a new car for 3 months, and then at the end of the 3 months said, by the way, you can only afford blank. You need somebody, whether it's Carfax or whatever, with some financial background to provide some balance, because in reality, if it's going to be we're going to buy open lands or if we're going to sell, right off the bat, the next issue is what are the financial implications for the budget? If it's buy, can we afford it? Everything else is secondary. So my recommendation would be somewhere in here, there has to be, and I leave it up to you, somebody with some financial background. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Commissioner Schaefer, that might be something interesting to look at. The Carfax committee is a new committee that isn't actually formed yet, but it will be very shortly, so that might be an idea as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, I believe part of the open space plan actually puts in place a policy that says, when do you buy open space? How do you sell it? So it's clear guidelines. So it's pretty much that there'll be a standard that'll be set in there, which I think goes back and answers that question financially of why and why do we buy property? There's got to be some reason behind it. What is the benefit to it? So I believe as part of that open space plan, we'll actually set that standard in place and have something to follow by criteria, which I think is going to be very, very, very helpful in how we acquire and then how we can go about and sell property.
All right, thank you. We're going to have a discussion on the Radnor Memorial Library fundraiser that Eastern University would like to hold for the benefit of the library. I think this is a staff item, and also I saw Kathy, members of the library that would like to speak on this. And for those at home, please identify yourselves.
Right. I'm Kathy Mulroy. I'm the director of the Radnor Memorial Library.
My name's Kendall Jackson. I go to Eastern University. I'm a freshman.
About a week ago, I received an email from Kendall, who, as a result of a student government discussion, has decided to try to organize a fundraiser for the library. And it would be a car wash, and we would do it in the library parking lot on a Saturday before the library opens. And I guess my very first thought was, oops, it's township property. Can we have a car wash on township property and raise money for the library? So I immediately sent an email to Mr. Zinkowski, and basically after their research, they seemed to determine that there isn't any hard, fast rules about that. So they decided that it would be best that Kendall and I come today and present this idea to you and find out, and Kendall can answer questions about what she's planning to do, and to tell you that the library board is in favor of this if it's okay with the township.
I'll move the approval.
Well, we have a motion to approve.
it looks
this,
like the young lady would
fundraiser.
like to say something first, so.
Yeah.
Oh, I was.
But that's, but that's
Well-
the correct procedure is to get a move in second before we discuss, so I appreciate that. Sure, we'd like to hear more detail. That'd be
Okay.
great.
So it would be on May 7th from about 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. with a group of volunteers the size of 10 to 15 people, washing as many cars as possible. It would not be a flat car rate. It would be for donations, and we would use biodegradable soap so that it's eco-friendly. And are there any more questions?
Well,
It's
Any questions
it's
from the
easy
board?
one. Let's just vote and move forward.
okay. Well, it sounds like a great idea. I'm glad to hear that it's not a fixed charge because my car hasn't been washed in 22 years, so. I will give you a big donation if I come out. I appreciate
He
it.
always says that, Kevin.
We know what he does to legal women voters.
Thanks, Kevin. Any further comment from the?
Kendall, what is your connection to the library?
The library. I actually have never been to the library, but I feel that it's very important that the library is kept around because it provides so many beneficial programs for children, preteens, teens, and also adults. So I feel that it is very important to keep it in the township.
That's great. At this point, any public comment on the motion on the table? I see one.
Thank you, excuse me.
Jim, you want your bike washed? Is that what this is about?
And my shoes. I'm Jim Schneller. I am concerned, I'm sorry, is there a club that sponsored this, or was it just the student government? Or? Thank you. I object because Eastern is in the middle of a lot of negotiations, zoning hearings, planning commission presentations. It appears to be a spearhead, and it will be continuing for years, and I suspect that's a strong word. I want the board to avoid any kind of PR, if you will. I see that there's no sponsor of a club or an organization, so I have to wonder about the origin. And for the benefit of the Radnor public, I think maybe we should just ask that Cabrini and Villanova be asked to do something equal within the next 30 or 60 days. So we have a good perspective on the local universities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
We don't need more discussion. Call the question. Call the question. Call the question.
Okay.
Don't worry about that. Okay? Call the question.
Okay.
Call the question.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Motioned by Commissioner Spengler and second by Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you very much. We appreciate. And anyone else who wants to raise money for the Radnor Library, we encourage you to
We
do so.
appreciate it. We really do.
Paperback book sale, right?
Okay, we will be changing the location of our Board of Commissioners meeting that was to be held at the Radnor Memorial Library. We'll be moving that back to the Township Building on April 25th.
Nobody wants this, Bob? Is that the problem?
No, I think what the suggestion was is being that you're more than likely going to have the Agnes Irwin issue on the next agenda, given the space, and I'm sure the library wants to be there till 1, 2 in the morning, but being that it would accommodate itself much better in this room, and I know there have been questions too regarding some of the issues that may be hot button issues, that they be kept here in this facility, and I think given some of the discussions previously, it's probably a good idea that we have this meeting back here, and I know the library has been very workable with us on that, and we just want to be able to, they were more than willing to accommodate us for that meeting, but given the potential topics, it's my recommendation that we move it back to this building.
Move the authorization, change location.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any commissioner comment?
Bob, I understand that TV 21's worked with Jim Doling, and when we do finally get to the library, we'll be able to televise that live.
Correct. Studio 21's done a nice job working with us on that. So it has nothing to do with Studio 21, with the library, or anything. It's just a decision we felt to bring it back to this meeting, given the content of the potential meeting.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. That was moved by Commissioner Spengler and second by Commissioner Mahoney. We have Resolution 2011-51, amending the Charter Review Commission. I think I'd like to hear from Bob Zinkowski on this, or John Rice, just to give us a little background on this.
As you may recall, at your last meeting, you established a Charter Review Committee. The initial resolution, I believe, said 8 members. You ended up actually appointing 9 that night. And the language in the resolution, at least the first paragraph under the criteria, was very broad it talked about the members not holding any other municipal office or appointment. And I think that what the administration's intent was that none of the elected officials, none of the employees of the township would be included in that class, but it wasn't designed to eliminate anybody serving on any other board or committee unless there's some other state act that might preclude somebody, like a zoning hearing board member couldn't be appointed to this under the MPC. So there was one appointment that had been made, and there was a question about that appointment because she was on a subcommittee. So in order to clarify this, and I think 2 or 3 of you contacted both Bob and I about who's qualified, who's disqualified. I think the new resolution, which you have in front of you, makes it clear it's 9 voting members, and the appointments are the same as what you approved last month. Members would not hold any elected office or be an employee of the municipality. They're the only disqualifying characteristics for the...
Or related.
Well, that's in paragraph 2. That part of this has not changed. Who gets to make the appointments, how many appointments, the fact that there can't be any relatives of other appointees or the person making the appointment. They have to be a resident, they have to be a registered elector. So that part of it hasn't changed. It's just the first part of this that there was some confusion about. And I think that'll clear up the issues and the questions. I don't think it changes anything else about what the substance of your discussion was last month in terms of the numbers and the appointments.
Move the approval of resolution amending the Charter Review Commission.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any commissioner comment? I'll just comment. When I read the original resolution, I took it on its face value and interpreted it as that no other appointment, no one serving on another appointment, another board or commission could serve. Personally, I think it was a good idea to pick people that were not already serving, because they would not be able to have kind of a single-minded dedication to the charter review. And I think the charter review kind of sets itself apart from all the other activity that we're doing. It was written in 1976. It hasn't been amended since 1976. And I felt that it was a good idea to have those who serve on that committee just be completely dedicated 100% to serve on that committee. So for that reason, I'll be voting against it. Any further commissioner comment? Any public comment? This is on the amendment of the Charter Review Commission, Resolution 2011-51.
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Condominiums. I didn't get a chance to object at the whatever meaty discussion you had, and because it's about the number of positions, I thought I'd like to comment, and I realize now that my comment has a lot to do about serving on 2 commissions. What about the appointee to League of Women Voters? Should they be permitted, if one of them serves on a committee, isn't that like triple dipping? I want to say along the same lines, I oppose the fact that the League of Women Voters has been appointed and I find it, I'm almost incredulous that it was done. I don't think you'll see this happen too often in municipal government. And I believe it's unfair and it's unbalanced. I was going to raise this anyway tonight because we're still within 30 days of the enactment. And it would be tough to get you to revote or reconsider, but I wish you would. I don't think that we look like we're being very fair to any other organizations who may not be as organized. They may feel trepidatious. And now I see that the League is, and I have nothing against the League, but I happen to believe that they are, at this point in the 100th year of their existence, they have swayed to political platforms, of course not, but it's common knowledge. And so I see that they're recommended for a position on the Open Space Committee. And at the very least, could you answer my question about what if a member of the League of Women Voters already served on a committee
As long as they're not a member, as long as they don't work for the township, they can serve, no matter how many committees they serve on.
Okay, but they really are enjoying somewhat of a partiality on the part of the board, and they're enjoying special privilege, perhaps. I'd like to discourage it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any further public comment on this resolution?
Good evening. My name is Christina Peroni, and I live at 234 Walnut Avenue. I didn't bring my copy of the last charter review, but maybe Mr. Rice has it. Can just read that one sentence, or does anybody have that one sentence, what it said?
I have it.
Okay, thank you.
It's the, under the criteria, it says there will be a charter review committee composed of 8 members, not holding any other municipal office or appointment, appointed and confirmed by the board and committee no later than April 11th of 2011.
Thank you so much. So not appointed to any other committee. I believe my recollection of the conversation was that the idea was to have people who are not always on other committees and sort of broaden, this is a really important committee, and maybe broaden it. My objection to changing this now is because it's my understanding that one member wanted to appoint somebody who was on another subcommittee or was on another committee currently serving. And so to me, it's very similar to, please indulge me, but, a commissioner going and getting a ticket at 55 miles an hour and coming back in the next week and saying, well, let's just change the speed limit to 56 miles per hour, and now I'm not doing anything wrong. I think it's very clear what the intent of that was, but a commissioner now wants to appoint somebody who's on another committee, and it didn't fit the criteria, and that's not the reason to do it. Had you guys all voted and discussed that early on and said, yeah, it's fine, we don't care, then everybody could have decided somebody who maybe was serving on a committee that they wanted. And so I just don't think that's really fair for everybody who spent time and energy picking a member to represent them, and their pool would have maybe opened up if they were going to have. It just is not fair to change the rules when the game's already in session. I mean, I feel honored that I was already appointed to this committee, and so I think we just should do it. My big thing is make the rules and follow them. That's my big thing. So I would ask this board just on a moral level to just say, you know what, it wasn't in it last time. You all need to play by the same rules. So I don't know if anybody else feels that way.
Well, one of the reasons why it's being changed is because you're on a committee.
I'm not anymore on any committee.
Well, you were.
And it
at
wasn't a
one point.
committee. It was not an appointed committee by the Board of Commissioners.
I'm telling you, you were the one that it was raised for, quite honestly.
Okay, that's not my understanding at all.
And we're changing it for you. That's what we're doing.
No, and that's not right either, but I was not, I wouldn't have been on it. I was not on any appointed subcommittee by this board. I have never been appointed by the Board of Commissioners.
We haven't appointed anyone yet.
Right, but my point is, it really is not about me. I was never appointed by the Board of Commissioners to any committee,
And
ever.
when I voted, I never thought I was voting that anyone that served in any other capacity in the township could not be appointed. Never entered my mind.
Maybe we should all watch the tape again to see the conversation, because that was my recollection, but I'll watch the tape and see if I remember correctly.
We're changing this because it was ambiguous, and frankly, I did not take away what you took away from that meeting. I thought you can't be related, you can't be you have to be an elector. It never occurred to me it couldn't be somebody who was on another board. In fact, I like to see people who are already engaged participate in this. So that's not what I took away from it all. I think this is what we're clarifying what we meant, and that's what we're doing now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 6-1, noting Commissioner Spengler moved and Commissioner Mahoney second on that. We have Resolution 2011-53 authorizing the annual rabies clinic. Do we have any comment from staff on this?
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, you have a resolution in front of you tonight for a free rabies clinic for township residents from noon until 4 p.m. on Saturday, April 23rd at the Public Works Building. This recommendation is from the Board of Health. And the reason it's before you tonight for approval is because there are costs and expenses that will be incurred. Bill White put these costs together, which you have in front of you.
There'll be 2 staff members providing services for this event, and the anticipated total cost is $896, of which labor is $776, and the vaccine cost is $120.
I'll move the approval of the resolution authorizing the annual rabies clinic.
Second. Matt, is there going to be a vet there administering this, or?
It will be Dr. Donato.
Oh, okay, great. And is he donating his services?
He is, and he's giving his vaccines are at cost at $120.
Great.
And most of the cost here is associated with labor again. But yeah, it's free to township residents.
Great.
Bob, do you have an opinion on this?
No, I think this is a good program, given the conversation that's taken place recently. I think this is a good program. Township has done this in the past, and it's the appropriate expense.
And I just want to clarify that the expense is on the township side. This is for Public Works employees and for the health officer. So this is not an expense.
Correct. There'll be 2 actually from Community Development, Marianne Cassidy and Larry Taltone, and then 1 from Public Works.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. I think it really helps reduce the risk of rabies. So at this point, any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Noting Commissioner Spengler moved and Commissioner Schaefer second. At this point, I'm going to open it up to public participation. If you'd like to make any comments on the agenda tonight or any other item, please come up. Note that there will be opportunity to provide public comment before each vote on every agenda item tonight.
Okay, sorry. Hello, my name is Vivian Chan, and I live in 153 Eden Drive, and I'm the co-captain of the girls' ultimate frisbee team. We have collected 224 signatures from Radnor students and adults on a petition to ask you to work with the school board to find us fields for future seasons. Here's what our petition says. We, the undersigned residents of Radnor, want to express our support for Radnor Ultimate Frisbee Team and our hope that Radnor's Township and School District will work together to secure regular, adequate, and safe fields for them to practice and play on. If the proposed lease of Memorial Field to the Agnes Irwin School occurs, Radnor Ultimate will lose access to the field they've been playing on, and field space, already in short supply, will become even more scarce for the children of Radnor taxpayers. We ask the Township and School District to make it their priority to provide an adequate replacement field for RUF athletes should Memorial, a field which happens to be within walking distance of 2 township schools, be leased out for use by a private school during desirable after-school hours. Only a few years after it formed, boys varsity placed second at the Pennsylvania State Championship in 2010 and is currently ranked 4th of the 157 boys high school teams, playing under the USA Ultimate organization. Last summer, one of our girls competed internationally at the World Junior Ultimate Championship held in Germany. Later this spring, both Radnor Ultimate Frisbee boys and girls varsity teams have been invited to play in the prestigious USA Ultimate Eastern High School Championships tournament. All we need to do is provide them fields to play spring and fall, and imagine what will come next. Thank you for hearing all our concerns. Mr. Fisher, can I give you the petition and the signatures?
You may.
Thanks.
Thank you. I will provide this to the staff in Parks and Recreation. And I appreciate you coming out tonight. This was kind of a surprise. The surprises are good. I think it's great that you were able to get so many signatures for this. I think it's good that you're able to get people to stand up for this. And I recognize that with the proposed changes at Memorial Field that there might be issues of where you'll play.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be important that we find a home or multiple homes for you to play at. So I want to thank you all for coming out. Any board comment?
Well, I want to thank you all for coming out. It makes a big difference when you come out like this and stand up for something you want. It really does make people pay more attention and work harder for you on your behalf. So thank you for coming out. And I agree with you. I think it's very important. This is an exciting and growing sport that has growing numbers, and we're going to work hard to make sure that we work with the school district and find you some fields. You will have Memorial Field for the rest of the spring season. So we're looking prospectively to next year, what's going to happen. But we're working for you.
And
Thank you.
I got a call about a month ago from your coach or the head of the program concerned that if we leased the field, that you'd have to get off that field. And I told her at that time that I would work with the lease to make sure that you could have it till May 27th. The state, she told me, was the 28th. And that I would have the township work with the school district to try and find you space. That was a month and a half ago I had that discussion, just so you know.
Okay.
We've been thinking about this.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you for coming.
And this is from a historical perspective. I don't know, Kevin, were you on Parks and Rec with me when the lacrosse teams came forward with a similar issue? When they were first getting started, they had the exact same issue, and look at how viable our lacrosse programs are now.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jean Moore. I live at 113 Woods Lane in Radnor. I am a parent of one of the players on the girls' ultimate team and the treasurer of the Radnor Ultimate Frisbee Club. Regarding the difficulties the Radnor Ultimate faces finding practice space, I don't want to be redundant, and I will try to be brief. But on behalf of the teams, I'd like to bring a few points to your attention as you consider what is best for Radnor Township residents. First, it is not true that no one is using Memorial Field, and you've also already recognized that tonight. Radnor Ultimate teams are using it daily for practice and games this spring. Our kids also used it throughout the entire season last fall. We've also seen other teams using it. Last fall, we sometimes saw soccer teams arriving for practice at 5:30 when we were leaving. And this spring, we've seen what we think are little T-ball players coming out for practice as we leave. So Memorial Field is in use. Second, it is true that field space is very tight in Radnor, and tomorrow is a perfect example of how tight that space really is. Radnor Ultimate teams, which are made up entirely of township residents, are being bumped from Memorial Field tomorrow so St. Catherine's can use it instead. The high school fields are all in use by other high school teams until 5:30 tomorrow afternoon. And we've been told that after 5:30, the township has use of all the high school fields. So despite the fact that our players are all from tax-paying families, these kids won't have access to the fields that our taxes support tomorrow, and they won't have practice tomorrow because we have no space. Finally, it is also true that the school district is working really hard to help Radnor Ultimate find regular access to adequate practice space. But for that to work for future spring and fall seasons, we believe that the cooperation of the township will also be needed. And that is why we are here this evening. I want to thank you all for listening to our kids and to our concerns, and I want to wish you all a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Robert Kuhne on Harvard Lane. What I would like to do is share with you the concern that we have on Harvard Lane, but also the neighboring areas around there about the proposal that is being debated for a private educational institution to rent the Radnor Park or the Radnor Memorial Park for $1 per year. And that is $1 per year for the next 15 years. As we have seen from the students that just spoke, they are already concerned and are already having problems having access to the field. The lease that is being considered should be considered an illegal lease, because when the land was donated to the township by the Sun Company, it has a deed restriction in there that in effect the land can only be used for public use. And the use by a private school is clearly not in that category. The park also is zoned as public land, and therefore leasing it to a private educational institution would be a violation of the zoning laws as well as the deed restrictions. I like to recommend or suggest to all the Radnor Township residents to follow this discussion over the next few weeks, because I believe it's coming up rather quickly in front of this group, And if they have any opinion about it, either for or against, to speak out and share that with his group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin Heldring, 305 Audubon Avenue. I don't know who that young lady is, but if you hand that petition back, I'll sign it. And maybe some other people in the room will sign it as well. So you might want to grab it back from them before you submit it. I'd like to follow up on the Agnes Irwin conversation. First of all, I applaud the township's efforts to reduce costs. I think that's a good idea. I applaud Commissioner Schaefer's comment that one of the things we're looking for is private-public partnerships to try and solve this issue. But when it comes to the issue, and I don't know the legal issues, I defer to the gentleman that just spoke, but when it comes to rent, I'm a little surprised that we would contemplate something for $1 a year. And let's just break it down into two issues. First, you have the 15 years, and then you have the 5 one-year options. Now, if you're Agnes Irwin, you've got some smart guys on their board. They've made some decisions about how much it's going to cost to make the improvements in the land, and the only way they can rationally look at that is by amortizing over the first 15 years. Because that's all they're sure of getting. So now you get to the end of the 15 years, and you've given them that land. Yes, you have options to cancel, but you've given that land for free for the next 5. That should be a second decision. I would question that. When you get also to that point, I work for a bank. We have very sophisticated systems. We have zero confidence in our ability to look out 15 years and know that we have a tracking mechanism that will remember that we have the option to cancel something 15 years out. So who here is going to know 15 years out that we might want to exercise that option not to renew for a year and the following years? You? Okay. You and I are going to be drooling on a beach in Florida. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to know. What will happen is, I think it's 60 days, we'll just ride right through it. Agnes Irwin will be paying a lot of attention to it because they know they need to use the field. So they're either going to make a decision at that point to use it or not use it. And they will, if they don't want to use it, exercise their option to pull out. We're not going to be that smart. So my view would be either you charge rent and figure out the appropriate price for those next 5 years, those 5 after the 15, or get rid of those options. Moving to the first 15 years. To me, it struck me a little bit. If I bought a house, put $500,000 into it, and then all of a sudden realized I couldn't afford it anymore, and a developer walks up to my house and says, I'll pay the taxes for you, and I'll fix it up, but I'm not going to pay you a dime for the next 15 years. Would you sign that contract?
If the township got more use of that field than the people paying us the money and fixing it up.
Let's go to that.
That's the key.
That's the key. Okay. I would still say, in response to that, the township has, by the township's estimates, $2 million or so, $2.3 million in expenditures to get the land to the conditions in today. Plus the value of the land. I understand they got it for free, but if you took that land and sold it, 7.25 acres at $500,000 an acre, 3.5, $3 to $4 million. So the township's value in that is somewhere around $6 million that's being handed over for free. Now, I've got a niece that goes to Agnes Irwin. I have sisters. I like the school. I think this is a great idea. But $1? $1 doesn't make any sense to me. Now, Agnes Irwin has stated, as you pointed out last time, that they're refusing to pay rent. Well, why should they say anything different? The fact of the matter is, if they don't get this land and they have to go somewhere else, they have to rent or buy it, so they will have that expense, and they have to make all the improvements. What they've got here is a heck of a deal. So I would encourage you, certainly to look at all the legal issues, but under no circumstances is $1 a year appropriate. I would also suggest that in something like this, there's a lot of other potentially interested parties. You have a very good practice when you have a service that you need, you put it out for bid. And in something like this, Agnes Irwin, I believe, came to us. Is Notre Dame interested in a similar situation? I don't know. I don't know if they watch this on TV. I don't know if anyone sits and talks to them.
I've talked to them more.
Well, I don't mean to just mention Notre Dame, but there's other organizations. This could be viewed as a bidding process. Let some other organizations come forward and say, I'll pay more than $1 for that land if it's legal.
They're paying more than $1. They're spending over $1 million to fix the
Which
property up.
they would, well, let's get to that for a second. And I understand there's a lot of versions of the contract, but if you look at Clause C...
Martin, could I ask you a favor?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't you save this for the 25th, which is when we're going to vote on
Well,
it?
I would do that.
Yeah, no, this is public comment. We won't restrict any public comment during this
I'm
meeting.
not restricting it.
I
I'm
understand.
asking him to do us a favor because we have a long agenda tonight.
But it's actually, the agenda tonight will be very short compared to the other one, so
Well,
you may
I'm-
speak for a few minutes.
I'm trying to be succinct, but what worries me is, and the township mentioned this last time, they spent hours on this. And between now and the next meeting, they're going to spend hours. So if people like myself and others don't step forward and maybe change the direction before we get to voting on something, then they're going to waste more time. So I'm sorry, I know what you're saying, but I think some of this comment is productive now, would have been more productive before, but it doesn't make sense to wait, in my view. But in terms of the improvements to the property, there's a clause in there that says Agnes Irwin will put in a turf field. In the next sentence, it says they may, subject to Radnor approval, put in things like scoreboards, lights, parking, other things. So my understanding of this, when you all talked about it, was that there would be lights, which would mean that Radnor students or residents could use it after Agnes Irwin's done with it, when likely lights are going to be needed during the school year. If there's no lights on the field, Agnes Irwin's going to be using this thing till 4 or 5 o'clock. You're done. The contract says may. Unless there's a new version, it says may. Evergreen letters of credit were talked about last time. I just point out, since it's my expertise, there's not a bank that I know of in the country that's still solvent that would approve a 15-year LC. So they're going to approve a 1-year LC, and they will have the right to renew it or not. So it should be an event of default that if whatever bank they use, maybe it's TD, whatever bank they use, if they don't have an LC, this thing's gone. It's an event of default.
That's the way it is.
It's not clear. I read contracts all the time. It's not clear.
That's what my solicitor told me, so I have to rely on my solicitor.
Okay. I think that's it with regard to Agnes Irwin. A couple of other comments, and I will be brief. There was a lengthy conversation with regard to camp costs last time you voted for a sort of a cost in between. My son is applying to ESF camps. They run a number of full-day camps in the area. They charge for a 6-week full-day camp for kids $3,160. And we were debating 800 versus 1,000 versus 1,200, and very concerned about the implications for people having to pay a little bit extra. I think a discussion of the role of government is always useful, but whatever role government has, providing subsidized camp services, I don't think is part of it. And particularly given, I have children, but given our financial situation, I do not understand why we can't be at whatever the break-even was, 1,200 or 1,300, when there's other camps that are very actively used at 3,000. Just doesn't make any sense to me. 2 other quick comments. Ardrossan was mentioned during your discussion on Agnes Irwin. I want to remind people, on the one hand, we're talking about saving money by getting rid of this property. On the other hand, we're talking about potentially anywhere up to $20 million to buy. I was watching on TV, it was incongruous to me that those 2 subjects would be in the same sentence. If you can't afford what you have, how do you have a conversation about buying more? I don't understand. And my last comment is with regard to the survey. It was discussed, I think, 2 or 3 meetings ago, roughly. And I sent a note to Commissioner Curley because I think it's important that you all see the questions that are going to be in this survey. Because I've done a lot of surveys and customer-focused things, and if I want the end result to be that I want people to tell me to buy open lands, the question will be, do you support buying open lands? Everybody will vote yes. If I'm not supportive of it, I'll ask the question, do you support buying open lands if you know it's going to raise your taxes by 20%, double the size of the budget, and oh, by the way, it'll all be in one ward, and we're not even sure how much it'll cost to maintain it? I think you'll get a different response. whatever the direction you want to go, you should see those questions and how they're formed before they go out, because they can influence the results. And each of you would have an interest in those results, I think. I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
If I could just make one comment about the, no, it's fine. The assertion was made that Agnes Irwin would just go along, if we didn't give this to them, they would just go along and rent somewhere else and be paying a lot more money. And I just want to divorce this conversation from a normal rental, leasing, buying. This is a unique partnership we're being offered. It's not a flat-out lease where they take over the land. They're offering to make this investment and take over the expenses and only use it for 17% of the usable hours. We, Radnor Township, gets it all of the rest of the time. This is very unique. You're not going to go out on the market and find that. So it's a little unfair to compare it to just going out. They'll pay for a lease somewhere else, or they'll buy property somewhere else where they get a complete interest in the land. Here, would be a partnership where we get a lot out of it.
All right, public comment?
Yeah. 17%, I think, is maybe a little bit unfair. If you think of usable hours for when students, I think it's mainly students that use this, right? So they're in school, they're sleeping. We're talking
sports programs.
Sports programs. So we're talking weekends?
Nights and
and
weekends.
nights, right. So I have to do the math in my head, but I think 17% is probably a little bit unfair.
We have top programs during the day as well.
Well, but the lease, I believe, does have a provision to cap off use of the field at 9 p.m. So we really do have to be very honest about the total amount of time and how much use we'll have and they'll have.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, just
Yes.
before the gentleman, just to Martin's point, the Board of Commissioners will actually see 2 rounds of the questions. I just got an email late this afternoon. The commissioners should get their first draft of the questions this week, and then there'll be a revision made, then there'll be a second time they'll get to look at them before they're finalized to go out.
This is on the survey?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Public comment. Name and address, please.
Yes, good evening. Excuse me. My name is Craig Haddon. I live at 367 Sugartown Road. Longtime resident of Radnor. As a matter of fact, with the exception of 6 years that I lived in Chesterbrook, I've lived here all my life. And I believe, as you guys do, that we as a township, whether it's the school district or this board or any other board, we have a responsibility to ensure our youth have adequate field space. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anybody would argue that point. What I don't understand is, knowing what we know about how there's a lack of field space for our current sports programs, how we could even think of leasing or renting or giving away one of those facilities to a private organization. It just boggles my mind. And in the interest of full disclosure, I would like to admit that my daughter is one of those ultimate Frisbee players over there, so I do have some skin in this game. And by rights, I could possibly not care after next year because she's going to be a senior, but I am concerned about the kids that are in middle school that haven't even played ultimate Frisbee yet, and all those other teams you talked about, and where are they going to play? You know, it is our responsibility to make sure they have a place to play. And these kids don't care where they get a place to play. They just want a place to play. And I assure you, they're probably upset, although they're sore from a tournament they had this past weekend. They're probably upset they can't practice tomorrow. And they can't practice, and you already heard why. My parish is using that field. Great, it's good for them. But these kids are taxpayers' children, so I just don't understand it. And I think that you know, it would be nice to know, in the interest of full disclosure, if there are people in this board and in the school district and maybe in Parks and Rec who also have some skin in the game and have some connection to Agnes Irwin or some of the other sports teams who might get preferential use of that turf field once it gets put in. Which leads me to if it gets put in, leads me to my next point is that, you know, if this were to happen, and during that, I'm not that good with math, but that 83% of time, or 93, whatever it is, I told you I'm not good with math, that we would have access to those fields, we being the township people as opposed to a private organization. Who will determine gets that 83%? And how is that going to be fair and balanced? And how are we going to decide who does get to use it?
That'll be Radnor Township will do that, just like we do every other
Okay,
field.
but again,
But let me
but
just
those
say-
people,
let
if
me
they
just
raise
say-
their hand and they have skin in the game, will it be fair? Will they make sure that these kids get use of it over
No.
someone else's preferred?
Let me just say, by putting it-
excuse me, but I am.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
okay,
ahead.
I'm done. Go ahead.
By putting a turf field there, we'll have more field space for our community. And that will help maybe.
I don't know
free up
how
some
that's
space.
possible because space is space.
Because.
And unless it's getting bigger, I don't know how that's possible.
Because that field is in poor condition. When you put a turf field, you get more use out of it. You don't have to worry about the rain and the mud and all that stuff.
Well,
So
I'll give you
we
that.
put a turf field at the high school, 2 of them. We threw in $250,000 for each of those fields. Got
And?
criticized for
Okay.
doing that. And that provides more playing time for the kids of Radnor Township.
Yes, for selected programs in Radnor
Not selected,
Township. Well, I
not
mean,
selected program, for all the programs.
Well, I'd like
And
to ask the
you're-
Ultimate Team if they've
you're
ever
a-
been given access to that field.
You're a new program. I knew nothing about it till last
Okay,
year
well-
when I went to I played softball there.
Bill,
saw
I didn't-
them-
I didn't come here to
Excuse me,
argue with you.
Excuse me, I'm just
Okay.
talking. I
Or to be
I saw
argued with.
Frisbee for the
Mr.
first time.
Spengler?
No, I'm talking,
Hold
John.
on. This is public comment, and what this has become is public dialogue.
John,
I think it's best not to get into arguments
I
at this
appreciate your
point,
thoughts.
and just allow the public
I appreciate your
comment.
thoughts. Let me just say, the first time I saw last year was the Frisbee. The woman who runs it called me a month and a half ago, and I guaranteed her they would have the field. I would work to make sure they had the field to the 27th, and I would work to get them a field for next year. Okay? We're
That's
in
fine.
support of this, so there's no argument.
I'm not arguing.
Fine, thank you.
I'm just trying. We're trying to make our point be known, and
I know
us be
about
known.
it, and I offered my
Okay.
support.
That's good, and I'm
Fine.
glad, and I hope that it continues in that vein because it's all about one thing. It's about making sure these kids have a place to play. Somewhere. I told you, they don't care where. They don't care if it's turf. They're actually more than happy to play in that mud out there in Memorial Field right now, and that's them. They like mud. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do our best we can.
Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is and I know you're not voting on this for a couple of weeks, but as you consider it, as you sleep on it over the next couple of weeks, that you ask yourself 3 questions. One is, how would you feel if your child was one of these kids over here, your grandchild, or your niece or nephew, or a neighbor, or a constituent, was faced with the possibility of not being able to continue to play a sport that they love because they can't get field space? Second question is, what would you tell them about why that's happening to them? And the third question is, what would you do if you had a say in that whole thing? So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Christina Peroni. Could you educate the public as far as what is the process right now? Because this is regarding Memorial Field, so that this group knows what's going on. I mean, my understanding was that, Mr. Rice was going to find out if this is even legal and look into those legal issues and look into the indemnity issues to see if this ever does become before the board again. So can we just know what the timing is like or what's going on, or is this still a valid issue? Is it not? Or is open space? Like, what is the deal? Like, what is going on so that the public knows?
I hope it's on the agenda next month and we get a chance to vote on it after a public discussion.
That wasn't my question.
Well,
Can John answer the question, please?
I'll have the solicitor respond, but let me just, an overview is that the Board of Commissioners looked at this issue, had some discussions. It had gone back to the Parks and Rec subcommittee of the Board of Commissioners. We had public discussion at that level. At this point, it's with the solicitor. He is investigating these various issues, and I'll have John speak to that now.
Right now, it's anticipated this will be on the agenda 2 weeks from tonight. It has to be introduced by ordinance because the charter requires any 3-year lease or more to be done by ordinance. The 2 issues that came up at the last meeting was the corporate center owners running this by them. Staff's done that. They apparently don't have an issue with this, nor do they believe that the covenant excludes what's being proposed. I'm also providing the board, and I've given, I think, all the board members my legal opinion. I'm going to give them a more formal written legal opinion, which Kevin, I think 2 weeks ago, thought was a good idea, and I think it's a good idea too. So it's going to come back. It'll be on the agenda on the 25th, and then the board will vote it up or down. There's also been just what also has happened is there's been, from the last draft, other comments and other issues that have been raised by other parties, by the corporate center. They had some concerns about traffic. So there's going to be some other revisions to that lease. Nothing substantive at this point. I think the basic schedule and the concerns that the Park and Rec Board had and that the commissioners had that were communicated to me, that Agnes Irwin had, that some of the other parties had, are in that lease at this point. So in 2 weeks, unless something changes or the board tells me we're not going down that path at all, then it'll be back and the board will vote on it up or down.
But John, just to be clear, it's introduced next in 2 weeks.
Introduced,
Right.
right.
And the other part you're researching is whether or not, as has been pointed out by somebody with historical knowledge, that there may be a restriction based on the donation of that land. Do you have any update on that, or have you not had a chance to research that yet?
The restriction is the covenant, is what's been called the tri-party agreement. That's the only restriction.
I think it was from Sun Oil, that Sun Oil, I mean, I think Mr. Mahoney actually knows the most about this. I think there was some agreement, maybe Mr. Spengler, there was some agreement that Sun Oil donated.
It wasn't Sun Oil, it was
Rubenstein, because they wanted a parking garage, and so in return, there was an exchange of this land donate. I don't know, that's my understanding that I've heard, that there was donation, but that there is this covenant where it's supposed to be open space.
I'm not sure.
A deed restriction.
I'm not sure whether it's a deed restriction or whether it's encompassed in the tri-party agreement. I think that's one way.
That is a deed restriction. What everyone calls a tri-party agreement, it's a declaration of covenants, restrictions, and
Okay.
conditions. It's
Okay.
recorded. There has been a title search.
Okay.
That's the restriction.
So it is a deed restriction. That's what the tri-party agreement
Correct.
is. Okay.
Correct. It's a declaration of covenants, restrictions, and conditions. There's been a title search of the property. That's that thick. There's 3 parties to that agreement: the school district, the corporate center, and the township. And if you read it, all of it, it's pretty clear what the intent was. It's also part of the building of the school out there, Hares Lane,
Correct.
the environmental park.
Correct.
That was all, I think it was before most of our time, but that was all resolved. For whatever reason, it was resolved in the way it was. That's the restriction, what everyone has called the tri-party agreement.
One of the questions which I did have was, what's the school district's take on this? And what has their reaction been, if any, if anybody knows?
What I have heard from the school district, they have no issue with this.
Mr. Wright,
There's
John
been no
Rice.
objection from anybody from the school district.
John, the scariest words I ever hear is, they said, or I've heard no opposition. I can't even fathom this board moving ahead without a written release from the other 2 parties. I can't imagine it. In any business dealings I've ever had, if I just went on someone's word on the phone, I'd be done. It'd be over. The party would be over. I'd be sued at some point. The point I'm worried about is that if we don't follow this process and get written releases, we set ourselves up for an equity claim at some point, because the deed restriction is very well worded. It says shall be used for public use only. You know, it's very clear.
Right.
So when you start to bend the rule, I want to get out of jail card. I want the school district and I want the attorneys from whoever owns that land at this point to give us a written, notarized release saying we waive and release you of all future claims, everything from this point on that agreement, on that particular piece of that agreement. So
And I would add
we
that
have to
all
be
the
careful.
owners of Hares Lane who were party, as this gentleman, I mean, I was an owner of Hares Lane, those people were all party to all those negotiations. So I would there's not that many owners of Hares Lane, there's maybe 7 or something. There's very few people who live on Hares Lane, but I would make sure that all those people as well who were party and hired lawyers during that whole negotiation, you know, which there were a lot of meetings at my house, so this was a big thing that went on, that everybody releases this. Why get into a situation to do that where we don't know that it's free and clear?
The only problem with that argument, with all due respect, is that the people on Harris Lane were not parties to the tri-party agreement.
Right, I do agree with you.
And as I said to you before, that if they had wanted to be and had enough gumption from their lawyers or whatever, they maybe could have become part of the agreement, but they're not. And the agreement specifically states that it's the three parties who can enforce any restrictions on the others, not outside parties. I mean, it doesn't say not outside parties,
Right.
but that's clearly
Right.
the implication. So that, and you and I had that discussion
Right.
last time.
The-
And I'm not trying to
No,
argue
no, no,
with you.
no.
It's
The
just-
difference is, Mr. Mahoney, that the people who were party to that Harris Lane, and I was one of the people who had property on Harris Lane, believed that when the township signed an agreement that said this will be open space, they thought the township was going to stand behind this will be open space, open to the public. You know, I don't think any of them thought that that doesn't mean this will be open space, open to the public. So again, I appreciate this conversation. I am so grateful that Mr. Fisher is saying all the releases. Before this were to ever come up again, I would really hope that a whole package comes out and that you give the community 2 weeks to look at the lease, look at the releases before you bring this up for a vote. Because I don't think it's fair to just bring it up for even a conversation without having that stuff online. If everybody feels comfortable with it, put it online, get the community out there, get the releases out there, and then have your vote. But let's not try and push this through. So I would really ask that that lease is online, because there were a lot of issues with that lease, as I think everybody brought up, in addition to all the indemnities. And again, the school district should have their opportunity to vote in public, have it as a resolution that they agree with, and that they'll indemnify us as well. Why should we get ourselves out there to do something because a couple of soccer teams want this? You know, you have this lovely group of individuals who are fighting very hard to get their space. And I, secondly, would like you guys to look at, and I'd ask Mr. Zinkowski if he wouldn't mind doing this, just releasing to the public, what is the criteria? Why, no offense to St. Catherine, why is St. Catherine, Agnes Irwin, or anyone else preferential treatment over our kids? I mean, you know, this is why we all live here, work here, spend money here. Why would anybody get, I mean, I would think we should let it out to the public when our people are done with it. Why would, I mean, I see this all the time. Agnes Irwin is using our fields at the high school. Why would anybody get to use it over our kids? So my understanding is there is no policy. It would be nice if that became public. You know, let's get some criteria. It's just my opinion that we should get to use it first. Maybe there's some logical reason we shouldn't, but it doesn't make sense to me that these kids would be kicked off the field for any private institution. No offense to St. Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Sure, maybe if I just respond to that. I guess, I know for myself, only being here, and I guess it's upon 11 months here, again, the policy in that. But it's interesting, though, to hear some of the dialogue, because when you have, using our kids, is not only does the township use it for just township programs, but there's also soccer groups and other clubs. So it would have to be the standard across the board, which I think at the end of the day, you're going to have this room filled with just as many people. So hopefully yourself and other people will be here to be able to the board when they make that decision, because it's going to be a rude awakening and a big change to the way the township has done things in the past, which I believe is long overdue. But also the standard of how we do leases for different facilities also has to be changed, because I think too is we have certain things where this group should get a certain preference, and because this one is here, they should get that. It's not standard. So to me I agree, it should be across the board. We should do things. The interesting part though is when I hear the students, again, this is a school-sponsored event, in that this is the first community I've ever been where actually the schools have not handled those types of situations. So this is something that, again, for myself being experienced, where it has become the township's responsibility to provide space for club sports for the schools, which is interesting. That's a first for me. But it's something that we will continue to work on, and the commitment from the township is to provide them as much space as possible. But I think what we've talked about, public-private partnerships, I think this is the way in which the township needs to move in these type of direction. Because the other option is either we maintain them in not a good condition, or we raise taxes. So, I mean, the option is, I mean, that's an option that we have to honestly talk about to say that is, if we do not go forward with this Agnes Irwin, the field condition cannot remain as it is, in my opinion. So the option is we're going to have to raise dollars to be able to do that, which personally I don't have a problem with, but I think you're going to have a lot of homeowners in the community, upset with that. But the standard is, where do we go? I mean, and that's where I think the board is going to have to make some difficult decisions, because wherever the decisions are, there's going to be unpopular decisions that are going to be made. That's being across the board honest. There are some that are not going to like the decisions that are going to be made. Because again, you have a lot of groups that I think utilize the township's facilities. For kids, you have a lot of volunteer time that they use. And you've got parents just with the Ultimate Frisbee team, of how much time they donate of their own time and travel and all those expenses. I'm not sure if that's something that the schools offset those expenses or not, or if that's completely on the students. So again, it's a huge sacrifice there. So how do you try to balance that out from a typical model of, here's what the cost of the field is, so you need to pay this type of rent to where? So I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into that. So it'll be an interesting conversation as we move forward with that.
Martin Helding again, just one quick comment. I think this Agnes Irwin conversation started 2 meetings ago, is that right, roughly? More?
Oh, yeah,
Publicly?
way back.
Many months
Publicly?
ago.
Many months ago.
I remember it 2 months.
No,
So,
2 months.
but the township has, do you want to estimate how many hours you have into this so far and how many legal hours we have into it?
Well, you're supposed to be,
Public comment. So let's just say it's a lot. It's a lot. And the board's instructions were to the township to negotiate a contract. And at the end of the day, we might all find out that any contract with Agnes Irwin is illegal if you don't get what you're looking for, Commissioner Fisher. So I think, again, in light of the budget considerations, to have instructed the township to negotiate and spend all those hours, both hard and soft dollars, could have been handled a little bit better. My recommendation would be, Bill White today has a very good memo, I think, with regard to the $600,000 fire truck. Very succinct. Here's why we're doing it. Here's the rationale. Here's how much it costs. Here are the budget implications. I don't remember anything like that for Agnes Irwin, but if there had been something like that, it would have had those issues in it. It would have had any legal issues that Mr. Rice could have detailed. It would have had a picture of the property so those of us who hadn't seen it could see it. It would have been we do this when we lend $1 million or $100 million. We have a deal discussion memo, 1 page, all the critical issues in it where everybody can say it's not a final decision, but it's a go, no go. And then they have the instructions, and there's clarity around it so they don't waste their time. So that would be my recommendation. Some sort of deal discussion is the wrong word because it isn't a deal, but some memo like that builds on Bill White's memo for the fire truck. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Park. People have said most of what I wanted to say. I'm afraid I also want to talk about the Memorial Park. But I'd like to add things that came up at the subcommittee meeting, just to emphasize them. The field, I'd like to see proof that the field was seeded and or fertilized in the past 3-4 years. And judging from the amount of activity it gets, it may be a little muddy, but I don't see any salt damage. I see a green field that just happens to get turned up by all the many sneakers. I also, for that reason, I consider the fact of a wonderful promise of improvements to consist of a turf field. The chances are 50-50 that they're going to have to remove that turf field. That was a definite discussion. That's a definite part of the lease. It's there for good reason. And so, in that turn of events, we've gained nothing except some light poles. Pardon me for jumping around, but I think that I'd like to confirm that there are soccer teams. There is a lot of spontaneous use of that field. Who's going to suffer if this becomes another casualty? The first people are going to be the people who can just park a car with 10 friends and play some soccer, or people who are playing t-ball or teaching their kids. As far as a covenant, I'd like to remind you that even a covenant or a restriction is one of the parties, the township, to that. So there's really it's not just like changing a covenant. I think it has a lot more weight where the township is involved, and you should consider that. And finally, I think that there is a section of the parkland has been included in the diagram exhibit to the lease. It's about 100 or 200 square yards. It's clearly intended to fall under the structure and or parking allowance that may happen with board approval. Can you really give parkland up? And can you give it up to someone who might be building a shed for soccer balls? I can't believe that this would be happening, and I can't believe you'd give them one more square inch than what they need. All the teams have large trailers. They can put their soccer balls in the trailer. Let's keep the parkland. And I wanted to just state that on the diagram, it's kind of shown to be a basin or some kind of unusable spot. It's actually got about 20 shrubs and a walking trail. This is to the Archbishop Carroll side of the basin that someone stated was a basin. So please, I no one said it, but I wish that this plan would really be shelved.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up public comment. Any of you that were here to discuss or make comment and you don't want to stay, certain group over here, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're welcome to go home. But you're also welcome to stay. So we're going to move into the committee reports. Up first, we have Finance and Audit. Commissioner Higgins.
The first item on the agenda is the bills, the disbursements for approval bill list 2011-4A, a grand total of an authorized disbursement of $1,210,384.78. And these bills have been processed and verified by the department heads and are within the approved budgetary limits. So I'll make a motion to introduce and approve, and I have some questions.
Second.
I guess.
Move in second comment.
Let me start by page, Bill. Maybe we're a couple of weeks away still, but I thought we had said at the end of the first quarter we would have year-to-date budget versus year-to-date actual. I guess it depends potentially on definitional issues, since this is March report. So are we going to see it at the next one, or how far away are we from that?
Actually, I had intended on giving that report earlier tonight on where that's at and actually show you what I've got so far. I'm very close. I've got everything built because it all has to be done by spreadsheet. So I've got the spreadsheets built. I just have to put the information together so that it means something. So that's where I'm at right now.
So we'll see it at the next meeting or the meeting after when are you going to give us a revised
Yeah, if not
first?
sooner.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's identified on page 2 is March's month of March. 2011 March and 2010 March is the month of, correct?
Just March, that is correct.
My first question is on page 3, and I don't recall seeing these before. Maybe I have, and I just never picked up on them. The payments to the SPCA for boarding. They're at the bottom, page 3, in that bottom section under police. Is that something new, or?
Kevin, I believe the police, when they catch like stray dogs and whatnot, those animals have to be put in a temporary shelter. And I don't believe we have a shelter here on the property.
I just don't recall ever seeing a payment being made before. Now, maybe I don't recall.
That's correct. It's my understanding that we have been responsible for paying that cost. You're correct, Commissioner Nagel, that they will be changing their rules in which they will not be accepting animals.
And my other question is starts at the bottom of page 7 and rolls over to page 8. There are 3 payments identified as being associated with the Willows Cottage. Cottage water, cottage gas, cottage electric. And the lease agreement says that they're responsible for the utilities. So I'm wondering why we're paying for them.
Well, we're paying for it, however, we're paying the monthly bills. However, approximately every 6 months, our expenditure coordinator puts together an invoice and sends it over to the Conservancy, and they reimburse the township.
Why are we floating them for 6 months?
That was the one question that I certainly can't speak to what the thought process was at the time, why those accounts were transferred over. But that would seem to make some sense from my perspective.
I think these are some of the items that we continue to keep finding. So I'm not sure what the agreement was in the past of how that was worked out.
Okay, so you guys will straighten it out, but I don't think it's appropriate to front the money for 6 months, in my opinion. So,
If I could, just note that they have reimbursed the township. We're not out the money.
I
We
understand.
are floating a few months in advance for them, but they have made their payments.
it's a fair point. That was the extent of my questions.
But on Kevin's question you just made, what would be the administrative costs to invoice them monthly? And would that be offset by any interest that, we...
But you could ask the converse, John, of why not just bill them directly by the utility companies?
Yeah, from my perspective,
On a separate meter, that's all.
Yeah. It used to be our building. I mean, the township was maintaining that building. I have to use that term loosely. We were responsible for that building, and we were providing utilities to that building until we had the tenant, in this case, the Conservancy, take a lease. We do have a new lease coming at some point.
That's my understanding.
So we will be looking at that very closely.
The lease says that they're responsible for utilities. The current lease says
Agreed.
that.
And they are.
We could go to quarterly, maybe. It might make more sense.
We'll take a look at it as part of the contract.
Okay.
I just wanted to call out the promising number for March 2011 as opposed to March 2010 in the real estate transfer tax revenue. Last year, during the month of March, we received $43,000. This year, $107,000. So I don't know if that's a harbinger for good things, but
Well, we were up 120 in January and February.
right.
So,
So
no,
things are looking good.
And they just listed 3 or 4 more houses in my ward for $3 million. It's amazing, but so hopefully they'll sell.
Not listing them, selling them is amazing.
Okay, any further board comment on the motion? Any public comment on this motion? This is the motion for schedule of bills payable 2011-4A. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Moved by Commissioner Higgins and second by Commissioner Spengler.
The second item on the agenda is Resolution 2011-47, a budget amendment. And Bill, while I could take a crack at it, you'd probably do a better job of explaining it. So if you want to give the brief summary of what this is intended to do.
Sure. What this will do is it'll change, both on the revenue and expenditure side, the amount of, it'll amend the budget that the board had previously adopted in December for the 2011 year to incorporate the various changes that are identified in the exhibit. In providing that documentation, there are notations as to the reason behind the changes necessary. Some of them, at least regarding the police department, we'll touch on, I think, later in the agenda tonight in more detail. But taking a look at including appropriations for the tub grinder purchase that was approved by the board, was included in the 2010 budget. However, the transaction was not completed in 10, so merely what we're doing here is incorporating the budget and the numbers into the 11 budget. So basically, that's just rolling that forward to this year. The Chanticleer tree program is the same type of situation, where we have received donations and we're establishing a budget to expend those dollars. And with regard to the budget amendment in the investigation fund, that is actually establishing the budget because it was not included in the original budget passed in December.
I'll move the approval of the resolution.
So, Bill, I don't know if I missed it when I was having the side conversation with Hank, but under the general fund, as a result of these changes, we're proposing a net increase in our estimate of the fund balance of a little over $40,000 for this year based on the increase in revenue associated with the grant and the fines associated with the meter. And in the capital fund, that is a net decrease of $100,000 based on the carry forward of the tub grinder, and the investigation fund is budget neutral, correct?
That is correct. The capital fund, in addition to the tub grinder, there are some police-related activity that was scheduled for 12, and we're asking that it be moved up to this year.
So I make the motion to approve.
Second.
I had just a few things that were a little confusing to me on this. One of the expenditures is from the Police Investigation Fund, Fund 12, which I have never seen anywhere. What is that?
Well, it is a relatively small fund that we are, my understanding is it's dollars that the township receives through seizures, forfeitures, that we are required to keep in a separate fund outside of the general fund, and it can only be used for police-related activity. So we are basically putting in $5,000 worth of estimated revenue activity, and at the same time putting in the $5,000 of estimated expenditure activity relating back to police.
So is there anything else in that fund?
No, that's the sole purpose of the fund. There cannot be anything else going on in that fund.
But she means is there other monies there?
No, we're going from 0 to 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
And
0
that's
back
why
in December.
when we passed the budget, we didn't see this fund, just because it's empty.
It was zeros at the time,
Okay.
yes.
My other question was about the shade tray. It looked like that was counted as an expense here, but maybe I'm misreading it.
Yeah, we got the income. Now you have to put the expense in the budget.
But we haven't spent, I mean, this is
I know, but
revenue
yeah.
coming in.
But you put in expenditure because if we spend the money, you have to have the ability to spend it.
But
No,
we didn't
but
spend it.
But you put the expenditure in the line that you can spend it. If you don't spend it, it's still there next year.
Yeah, this is an allocation.
Every item in the budget has all these expenditures. We don't spend all that money. Just because it's an expenditure, it's not spent until we spend it. So if you're going to put the revenue in, if you want to spend the money, you put in the expenditure. And if you don't plant the trees, then it'll be as expenditure for next year.
Yeah, and
We're not losing the money, it's just staying where it is.
Yeah, the donations were made in prior years from Chanticleer. That's why you don't
Right.
see a revenue line item in the 11 budget.
Right.
Because we received the monies in prior years. What was missing from the 11 budget was our appropriations to spend the money. So that's what you're seeing here.
Oh, that is what we have already appropriated to spend.
This
Okay,
is-
that makes sense.
Well, this is, if the board approves the budget amendment, this
Uh-huh.
will establish an appropriation to spend the money.
Okay.
And the fear of not doing that is those funds get spent on something else. So this will ensure that the donated funds are used for the purpose that they were donated for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any further comment? Any public comment on Resolution 2011-47? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none. Commissioner Higgins moved and Commissioner Spengler second.
The next item on the agenda is a request or an authorization to purchase software to enhance the functionality of our financial software system. So, Bill, rather than me try to summarize this memo that you gave us, why don't you give us the brief summary?
Sure. There are two different aspects to what is being requested here. First of all, it's important to note that these are additional functionality of the current software. We're not asking for new software here. The vendor has a module which will allow us to automate our purchase order process, which right now is all paper process. A department has a system that they enter the information on their computer, they print out a piece of paper, it manually goes to me for approval, then goes to the manager for approval, then comes back to finance, then gets back to the, I mean, it's not the most efficient process. The investment here is to automate that so that it is all done through the accounting system. And more importantly, what happens is any funds that are authorized through a purchase order are immediately backed off of or spoken for in terms of what's budgeted. So on a real-time basis, we will know not only how much money has been spent year to date, but through the purchase order process, we will also know what has been obligated to be spent later on. So we have a much better idea of where we stand on the expense side. Where right now, the purchase order system that we have is all kept off of the system, and which leaves room for errors. So this will clean that up, which is the primary purpose of the intention. And then the second aspect of this is a check signing safeguard. Right now there are digital signatures that are imprinted on the checks. Those are safeguarded internally by logins and passwords, and there are levels of security already built into the system. What we're looking to do here is, first of all, we got to change the signatures. Since the manager and myself are new, we need to change the signatures to match those that are at the bank on the signature card. But additionally, what I'd like to do is ask the software company to put in thresholds that if a check exceeds a certain dollar amount, the digital signatures will not print on the check, which will then require someone to physically review and sign the check. So we've run some numbers on the dollar amounts of checks, and we'll come up with the thresholds, and there'll be a policy behind that. But the idea there is that if, however, someone gets into the system and tries to cut a check, there is a threshold there that would eliminate the signatures from being digitally printed on it. So those are the two.
Okay. And just to be, the aggregate total for these two expenditures is estimated to be about $10,000. It wasn't budgeted, but we just covered it in our supplemental authorization.
That is correct.
So I make the motion to approve.
Second?
Any board comment? Any public comment?
By the way, John, I think the issue with the check signatures was pointed out to us by our auditors, at least the last and maybe even more audits.
That's right. It's been a big issue. You assume these things are in place already, but I'm glad we're addressing it. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Higgins moved and Commissioner Spengler seconded.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2011-48, authorizing the expenditure of $600,000 to the Radnor Fire Company to assist in the acquisition of a replacement ladder truck. Bob or Bill, any quick comments you want to give on this one?
Sure. What this is last year there was a motion made by the Board of Commissioners authorizing this expenditure, and it's the administrative recommendation that on these type of expenditures they should be approved by resolution. So this is, in our opinion, a housekeeping measure that this is approved by resolution.
Move the approval of resolution.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Any public comment?
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Park. I wanted to ask the board whether they could possibly persuade the fire department to withdraw their proposed cell phone tower. With such a wonderful outlay being given here, it'd be a good time to ask them to not propose to mar the townscape. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Spengler's move and Commissioner Higgins' second on that.
That's it for Finance and Audit.
Before we move off finance and audit, we received a letter from, I guess it came from Delcora or the Philadelphia Water Department, talking about the possible huge increase of fees at the Southwest Treatment Facility in Philadelphia. And that could have a pretty significant budget impact on us for our sewer fees. And I think it's important that folks know that that's laying out there in wait for us.
That affects the sewer fund, the sewer tax?
Yeah, that would, as
Sewer
I
fee.
understand it, that would impact what the rent charge the township would have to put on those, on the water usage that we send out annually.
Okay.
Bob, do you know if we have any recourse against that?
Being that they're the only supplier in town, there's really not much we can do except fight where we can. I know that we were looking to try to see if we could find another source of water to create a competitive situation, but I think the one organization we tried to reach out to really didn't.
Well, I believe
seem too
Delcora is
interested.
actually exploring alternates to using the Philadelphia treatment plant.
Yeah.
They'd have to build their own treatment plant.
And as I understand the problem, we don't contribute to it, so it's a bit unfair. But
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioner Higgins, for that report. Personnel Administration, we have Resolution 2011-36. This is the rate contract extension. I will have Bob Zinkowski speak to this, I assume.
Sure. Just, this is a extension that has been negotiated with the rate contract with the union. We're very pleased we're able to get this extension done. I'll ask Mr. White just to hit the highlights.
Sure. The current agreement with rate that was entered into or that began on January 1st, 2007 was set to expire at the end of this year and included certain wage and medical benefits that are being changed with this agreement. For 2011, that includes foregoing a 3% raise increase that would have been payable on January 1, as well as another 1% that would have been payable on July 1 of this year. Instead of those increases, this agreement would freeze those wages for 2011. And additionally, for 11, there are increased employee contributions to health care that impact all the members of the rate group instead of just the ones that were hired with since certain dates as the current agreement stipulates. So this will impact all the members. And in light of that, looking forward into 2 years, this will extend the agreement through 2012 and 13, which will allow us to at least have a better idea of what those costs will be moving into those years. They do include wage increases for those 2 years. Additionally, though, it includes progressively increasing employee contributions to health care as well. So those are the highlights included with the one-page summary, proposed legislation summary. There was a two-page financial look at what those costs might look like, comparing the 2011 numbers as well as what those implications might be for 12 and 13 as well.
I'll move the approval of the resolution.
I'll second that. Any commissioner comment?
Just thanks to the rate folks for negotiating in good faith with Bob. Bob, thanks for working this out.
Yep, ditto on that. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of rate or?
Good evening. Mike Simmons, President of RATE. I'd like to thank Bob for working with us, and I thank my membership especially. The guys and the girls of Public Works have always tried to work hand in hand with the township, and we understand tough times have been had here, so we're trying to work to keep things within the parameters of the budget and work along with the township, but still provide the level of service that these residents have come to expect and deserve. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Spengler's motion and Commissioner Fisher's second. We have one vacancy on the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee. Please send your letter of interest to Bob Zinkowski at the Township Building. And we also have 3 vacancies on the Ethics Committee. Again, send your letter of interest and resume to Bob Zinkowski at Radnor Township, 301 Ivan Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania. That's it for Personnel Administration. Public Safety, Commissioner Mahoney.
The first item on the agenda is Resolution 2011-42, approving the amending of the 2011 police budget to seek the hiring of a part-time meter enforcement officer. Superintendent?
Yes, good evening. Currently, we have one meter enforcement officer that works Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. There are approximately 787 meters in Radnor Township. We're asking to hire a part-time meter enforcement officer to work the hours of 7:30 a.m. To 10 a.m. Each day, Monday to Friday, to supplement the enforcement. Also, currently, there is no one enforcing the meters all day on Saturday, and we're asking for the part-time enforcement officer to come in and work a 10-hour day on Saturday.
And this request would cost approximately $18,252. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. And there would be no benefit package because it is a part-time employee.
I would move the approval of the resolution.
Second.
And just to be clear, there's $80,000 revenue generated from this position in the supplemental budget, correct, Bill?
Correct. And the expenditures are on the supplemental budget amendment as well. You'll see a difference in the number. The 18,252 is an annualized number. The number that's in the budget assumes that the person will be hired, being that the first quarter of the year, or really the first 4 months of the year, are basically gone moving forward. So if you notice a difference there, that's all it is. It's a hiring difference.
Can I ask, I always assumed that we didn't have a meter reader from 7 to 10 because there weren't that many cars parked at that hour, and there, you know, we wouldn't get as much recouped from the effort. So, I mean, when you figured out the 80,000, was that using the rate that we're recouping from business hours? I mean, I'm a little worried about, like, from 7 to 10 in the morning, there aren't that many people parking.
This was based on a survey done by Sergeant George Smith of our Traffic Safety Unit. There is a significant volume of traffic, especially in the North and South Wayne area, from 7:30 to 10 o'clock in the morning. Unfortunately, our meter enforcement officer isn't able to get to all those meters.
Okay. Okay.
I'd also like to stress, when you detail this individual, there are paid parking lots in Bryn Mawr as well. And I've had complaints from folks down there about people parking there overnight, all day. So this will give us an opportunity to do something about that.
Yes, Commissioner, this would give us more flexibility because having 2 meter enforcement officers would expand the area that they can control.
And I don't know if it's a question better directed to the superintendent or Bill White, but you'll basically know who wrote the ticket, and at the end of the year, somebody will be able to say, you know, the part-time meter person that we just hired here generated X amount of revenues during the time period they were hired.
We will be able to keep track, yes, sir.
I think in all fairness to the public, we should make sure they're aware that we're going to be enforcing more heavily on the weekends, and to make sure you put the quarter in the meter.
On Saturday, there's no
On
enforcement
Saturdays.
on Sunday.
On Saturdays. So, okay, any public comment on this motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Commissioner Mahoney, motion. Commissioner Spengler, second.
The next item on public safety is Resolution 2011-46, approving the contract to purchase alert software through Metro Technology, Inc. I understand that alert software is being used presently to maintain our police operations and record storage, and that this would cost us $6,200. Superintendent, any comment?
Oh, yes, sir. Just briefly, it's a continuing yearly software agreement we have. It's been in place since 1996. The current software program has been upgraded to an Alert 2 program that gives the officers more access on the street to do their reports and to access more functions.
All right. I'll move the approval of this resolution.
Second.
Board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 to none.
The next item is authorization to request bidding for a 223 Bushmaster AR-15 patrol rifle for the police department. That's like patrol rifles, plural. Superintendent?
Yes, Commissioner. Currently, the rifles we have are 11 years old. They were purchased in the year 2000. They have a 20-inch barrel with a fixed stock. The current rifles must be stored in the trunk of the vehicle due to their length. The rifles should be stored in the passenger compartment of the patrol vehicle. That will provide better access for an officer to rapidly deploy a rifle if a member of the public is in imminent danger of death or serious bodily injury. The barrels and springs are approaching replacement to keep the rifle in serviceable condition because of their age. It would be more cost effective to actually purchase a new rifle rather than to retrofit the current rifle. A new rifle purchase would be around $750. The trade-in value of the rifle we have is about $350. If we were to retrofit the rifles we have right now with new stocks and barrels, that would be about $332. So in other words, to get a new rifle after the trade-in would only cost us $68.05 for a new rifle.
All right. Do
I
have a
would
motion?
move the authorization.
Second.
Okay, board comment.
These were on the previous agenda and then taken off. Was that just because there was more than one supplier, whereas the handguns, there was an exclusive supplier?
That's correct, Commissioner. This has to go out to bid, yes.
Okay, public comment on this? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Noting Commissioner Mahoney move and Commissioner Spengler move second on that, on both that motion and the prior motion.
And that's all I have for public safety.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Mahoney. Public Works and Engineering, Commissioner Spengler.
Yeah, first I'd like to move Resolution 2011-43 for 344 King of Prussia Road, denying the subdivision.
I'll second.
Board comment? Seeing none. Public comment? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay. Motion carries 6-1, noting Commissioner Mahoney's opposition. It was moved by Commissioner Spengler and second by Commissioner Higgins.
Next is Resolution 2011-44, 950 Mill Road, approval of the subdivision lot line change. Dan, if they agree to all the conditions,
Yes, I have a signed affidavit agreeing to them.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Okay, any board comment? Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Moved by Commissioner Spengler and second by Commissioner Nagel.
Next is the discussion of Eastern University's to construct a new 39,570 square foot student unit building.
This is the caucus session. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, we had this on for caucus, and the board recommended that the applicant go back to the Planning Commission, which they did earlier this month. We had a pretty lively discussion concerning the parking study, and the bottom line is that the applicant had 7 additional or extra parking spaces, and the Planning Commission felt that they needed to add a total of 8 in order to meet the requirements. So basically, they needed to add 1 more parking space over what they were providing. So the applicant agreed to that, and I'm sure they may have some comments if you have questions.
I have one question. There's an item 7, and it says the plan includes upgrading the intersection of King of Prussia Road and Eagle Roads in accordance with one of the 3 proposed configurations. I don't recall seeing any configurations. And I'm interested in knowing whether it affects simply eastern side of the property or whether or not it affects anybody else's private property on the other side of the road.
Well, there were 3 configurations. I believe I had them on the overhead, but if you'd like, I can show them again. There were 3 different scenarios, one showing widening on the east side, one showing widening on the west side, which is the school side, and one showing a little bit of widening on both.
So why?
Well, there were a number of questions when I met with the applicant at PennDOT. PennDOT wanted to see additional information, specifically 2 dedicated turn lanes.
Right, I understand. I recall that conversation, but what I'm trying to understand is, on the other side of the road, are we affecting somebody's private property by this?
If that was the scenario that the commissioners felt was the best, then yes.
So it's up to our discretion?
Yes.
Any plan is up to our discretion.
I just want to understand what,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I do too. I'm following, so it's more of a question.
Yeah, so why would you have a plan if it's up to our discretion that you would affect somebody else's private property and not just affect Eastern's property?
Well, I don't want to exclude anything at this point in time.
Just presented a variety of options. And
Yeah, this is a preliminary plan.
And will you make a recommendation, Dan, based on your?
Well, there's another item further on the agenda that kind of goes with this item, and that's related to a
Number
traffic engineer.
0.
So yes, there will be a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the board on which direction to go.
So what we're going to get in the final plan is an actual recommendation for specific intersectional improvement. Is that right?
That's what I expect to see.
Well, the only difficulty I have with that is that if the preliminary plan approval, assuming we approve it with a condition that simply says the plan includes upgrading the intersection in accordance with one of 3 proposed configurations, how do we enforce that when we go to final plan?
Well, I'm going to refer to that to Mr. Rice.
Commissioner Mahoney, I think, as was mentioned, you have a resolution under O that would appoint a traffic engineer to specifically get involved for this intersection. Because what has happened right now, and I have these are the 3 draft, I think you received those maybe last month, but the 3 possible sketches, and they're just sketches. These are state roads. So ultimately, PennDOT's going to decide what goes there, but the township has to sit there, I believe, and it's my recommendation, you get a traffic engineer involved just for this, and go to PennDOT and work with Eastern's traffic engineer to come up with a specific set of improvements. And Kevin, I don't know whether that'll involve private property on the other side of King of Prussia Road or not, but it may involve Cabrini. Based on, but we don't know that yet, and you're not being asked tonight to approve anything.
Right. What I have a philosophical problem with is the fact that Eastern makes an improvement on their for their benefit, and then somebody who's on the other side of the road, whether they who doesn't have an opinion.
But it may be in the right of way on the other side of the road.
I understand the whole concept of the right of way, but it is still your property, whether or not it's in the right of way.
But it's not just improving it for Eastern, it's for the community.
Right.
So we have to look at the community as a whole. We're not doing this for Eastern. Eastern doesn't want you to do anything. Just leave it alone. They'd be happy.
The traffic study that Eastern did shows that this intersection's been operating at level F for years. So, I mean, you could...
But in a simplistic analysis, you could do all the work on Eastern side of the road.
And I think that would be the goal of the township sitting there at the table with PennDOT and saying, here's what the township would like. This is the optimal intersection improvement, something that Eastern can live with, something that the township can live with, but we don't have it yet. And you're probably looking at this maybe not coming back to you for preliminary plan approval, I think, till the end of May, assuming we get an extension beyond April 25th, which is what you have right now.
I'm sorry, do you expect the TIS to address item number 10 as well, which is the plan to connect the gymnasium parking lot to Eagle Road, enabling closure of the entrance of Fenimore?
Yes, that would be a specific condition that would come back to you for preliminary plan approval. And I think Eastern's agreed to do that.
Okay.
It's just a question of how long is that going to take for them to do that, because I believe they've got to cross a stream and they probably have to get a stream encroachment permit from DEP. But that would have to be something that would be a specific condition of your plan approval. And then we would account for that probably in a development agreement once they go forward. But that intersection needs to be addressed. And right now we have 3 sketches. So someone's got to talk to their engineer. Our traffic engineer needs to talk to their traffic engineer. They both need to go to PennDOT and see what PennDOT will approve. Okay. That will help the situation.
Right. And you expect that'll be in the preliminary plan approval as a condition?
Yes.
Okay.
I would suggest some language change to condition number 10. The way it reads now, it says the plan including upgrading the intersection of King of Prussia Road and Eagle Road in accordance with one of 3 proposed configurations or equivalent optimization. I believe we should state there that it should be in accordance with the PennDOT approved configuration, and then further to say proposed configurations or equivalent optimization approved by the Board of Commissioners. Because what I'm hearing,
all this is coming from the Planning Commission.
I understand.
This is not the resolution we're going to be considering in a month or so.
Well, I'm suggesting language for the the final. The reason I say this, I understand the intent. I know where we're headed, but I really think it's important that We state that in the resolution. And I think it's important to give the Board of Commissioners, and I don't know if we have the authority, but the final say on that optimization of that intersection.
What I hope will happen, and again, Eastern, will be involved with this, is that there's a specific configuration that will come back to you in advance of the meeting that you'll have to vote on this. You're not voting on this language tonight. You'll have a resolution, hopefully some kind of a design, but at least a broad enough condition that says, there's going to be a turning lane here, there'll be signalization changes to the timing, and whatever other road widening that's acceptable to PennDOT, it's acceptable to Eastern, and is acceptable to the township. This is too vague to ask you to act on this, even by your next meeting. There's no way to nail this down in a preliminary plan approval. So, that'll be back to you with a lot more detail and a lot more specificity.
All right. Now, one of the reasons why we sent it back to Planning Commission was to vet the issue of the parking calculations. And for this, I turn to Mr. Baumann. I assume you attended that Planning Commission meeting, Matt?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mahoney.
You satisfied that the issue got a full vetting, if you will, and that you're satisfied with the calculations at this particular point?
At this point, I am satisfied, correct.
Okay, it does comply with our parking ordinance?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Question for about 8, for John Rice. So this will proceed along, go to preliminary, even go to final, and I'm sure at that point they're still going to be talking to DEP. So, and you had just mentioned a development agreement. Can you elaborate on what that might look like? So if we're heading towards final approval and there is still no agreement or they haven't gotten approval from DEP yet, what would that look like?
Well, you're going to have if you grant preliminary plan approval, whenever that occurs, it's going to be specific enough to say, this is how the roads are going to end up and this is the road that's going to be closed off.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll say that in the conditions of approval. The development agreement then is going to have to account for how that gets done, how it gets funded, that there's money set aside to do that. Typically what will happen with that condition and any of the other conditions involving improvements like that is there'll be an estimate prepared by Eastern's engineer. The township engineer will review that and approve that, and then that money will be set aside so the township knows when you attach a condition, it's going to go in at some point. It may not go in the first 6 months of construction because they're still going to be dealing with DEP and the stream encroachment, but you're going to have the money set aside and it'll go in before they get a final sign-off on all the improvements that get escrowed.
Okay. Thanks.
Any public comment?
Yeah, does the applicant want to address the board at this point?
Nicholas Keneally representing the applicant. And basically, I agree with what John has said about bringing in the independent traffic consultant to work with our traffic consultant to look at configurations. Right now, the estimates we're getting is $1 million to do this improvement, and that's why we're really looking to put perhaps some pressure on PennDOT to see what we can do to do this improvement at a more reasonable number that will serve the purpose of both the township regarding the improvements for that intersection. Remember that none of this is required by the SALDO or the MPC, but Eastern has agreed to put in the loop road. Obviously, need DEP improvement. They have agreed to some extent to consider the improvements for King of Prussia and Eagle, provided they're reasonable. So that's basically the issues here. And I agree, we would have to work on some language for a preliminary plan approval.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board to the applicant? Okay, seeing none. Public comment on this issue?
I was wondering if I could approach the board and just give copies of an article from the paper, if I could.
Is what Colleen sent out today?
Yeah.
That's the Palmer Seminary?
So this article that I sent out has to do with Palmer Seminary, and I don't know if it's accurate or not accurate, but it basically says that there are about 430 folks there, and some of them will be coming over. Depending on how you read it, all of them are coming over. So that part of the conversation, I think. As I recall, I was at the Planning Commission. They weren't sure how many people were coming over. Dr. Black mentioned maybe 90. Clearly that the seminary is closing, and that is an issue, and it will impact more that intersection. So Mr. Caniglia just said that he's fine with PennDOT if the amount is agreeable to them. So we've got an F intersection, and unless it's something very concrete, not just agreeable to Eastern, then you're going to be giving your approval. So is there a way that you can do that in a very concrete way so that, maybe $1 million is too much, but, the impact that the school is having with this extra traffic, I don't know, is 500,000 okay? So I don't know how to do it. I don't know the answer, but how do we protect the community, and Eastern? I mean, it should be fair so everybody knows up front what is reasonable, what's not, but are they allowed to bring in, X number of additional cars without having to deal with that? So that's a question. I don't know the
I think
answer.
that'll probably be part of the traffic impact studies to determine what is the background level presently and what will the addition of the student union building, and if that becomes an issue, the additional seminarians, if that's what they are, coming to campus. I think that's all taken into consideration. And then as John indicated, Township, Eastern, and PennDOT sit down and say, okay, what's reasonable under the circumstances? And then someone's got to put a number on it and estimate it, and then the horse trading begins.
Right, but that would be agreed to before you guys vote, is what you're saying?
That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be, yes. Okay, so that would be in the agreement, and then that would be probably escrowed, I assume. When I did land development, I had to escrow PennDOT monies and any township monies.
Not probably. I mean, PennDOT will.
PennDOT will escrow it.
Right. PennDOT will require.
Correct.
Now, they will hold the money for their improvements in the
Right.
state right of way. Township will take the township improvements. But yeah, that'll all be done as conditions of approval, preliminary plan approval.
So before a shovel's in the ground, we're going to know what PennDOT's doing?
Yes.
And before a shovel's in the ground, we're going to know that there's approval for that loop?
Yes.
Okay, so that means DEP has to have approval and PennDOT, right?
DEP will be involved with, I think, the encroachment permit.
The loop issue?
Correct, the relocation of that road. I don't recall exactly what they have to go to DEP for, but I think there's a stream crossing in there. So that'll be a condition of the preliminary plan approval, that they redo the road, do the loop road, and then comply with all of DEP's requirements.
Okay.
We may not know what they all are until they go through that process, but we're going to have that as a specific condition.
I am curious.
That the board will vote on.
And excuse me for cutting
Yep,
you off.
no.
But has there been any discussion directly with DEP at this particular point as to concepts, and if so, what's the reaction been? Because I recall that the stream crossing issue the last time, we're going back 15 years, was somewhat problematic and took a lot of time.
Karen McManuel, Associated Engineering Consultants. We have submitted a pre-application for a pre-app meeting with DEP a couple weeks ago, and I have talked to them today. We have a pre-app meeting May 12th. That was their first available. So that's the first time we'll be able to show them a sketch plan and look at what we're doing.
Okay, good, thank you.
But just so you know, they could put a shovel in the ground before they had DEP approval.
But that's confusing, because the neighbors, I thought, were party to all this, and this is how, and there was this nice cooperative, agreement, and if it turns out that that loop doesn't happen, then that would be...
We're going to have the money, we're going to have the money escrowed. We're going to have the money
Thank you.
escrowed.
But I don't think they can put a shovel in the ground. They have to have the DEP. They might get our approval before
right.
DEP, but DEP won't let them.
No, I'm talking about building the building. She doesn't want to build the building until DEP, and I'm saying...
No,
we're
my
gonna have a condition
understanding is
escrow.
that that's what Mr. Rice just said.
No.
That they can't build until, no, that's not
You
what
didn't
you
say
said.
that. That's why I'm correcting you.
No.
Thank you.
No, the building can be built, provided that all the money that the shovel can go in the ground, provided that they posted sufficient financial security to cover all their improvements, whether it's with PennDOT or with the township. They have that option under the planning code. Then they can proceed forward. And that happens with a project like this where there's outside permits and they're ready to go on the main part of the building. That loop road is sort of off to a little bit separate from where the main construction is going to occur. But as long as they post whatever security is there, then we're guaranteed that that work will get done, whether it's done simultaneously with the building going up or 6 months after that or 9 months after that. That's the procedure.
Okay, so now I'm really confused, because so PennDOT then will come to some agreement, but we won't know how much is, like, if they're willing to spend $100,000 and PennDOT wants them to spend $900,000, how do you deal with that issue?
We'll come with the figure when we approve, but the improvements might not be done until after they build the building.
Right, but they're saying they won't
she-
agree to it. They're
What
saying...
Ms. Peroni is
Well, then they're not gonna
asking
build.
is, will there be an approval resolution which says that they have their approval from DEP before they put a spade in the ground to build the building?
No.
Thank
That's a
you.
logical question.
No,
No, they won't.
it's unlikely that they'll have DEP approval. This comes back to you at the end of May. You'll have a township condition which says that that loop road gets the way that the township wants it relocated. And they have to meet DEP's requirements for stream crossing. And then there'll be an estimate of what that cost is. Someone will have to do that estimate, and the township will hold that.
But I think what Ms. Peroni is asking, forgive me for putting
No,
words
I
in your mouth,
appreciate you doing it.
is if DEP, for some reason, says, sorry, no stream crossing permit, you can't build the road, what happens?
They can't build it if they won't get it permitted.
So can we make this conditional on that stream crossing and the construction of that road?
Why don't we get to the point where you actually have a resolution in front of you with everything instead of, because we don't know where we're going with PennDOT until we have someone involved in that process. And maybe, the stream crossing needs to be looked at also as part of this overall traffic analysis, because that is a traffic issue also.
But
I mean,
with
stream
all-
crossings are not, you can get a stream crossing permit in almost anywhere. And I suspect that if you ask Eastern's engineer tonight, she will tell you that she doesn't see any problem with having that permitted, but it takes some time.
But the point is, John, that if it makes sense, I was at the field actually in a big storm, and that field that they plan to put the building on is surrounded by a creek. And maybe there's a better place for that building so that they can do the loop field, internal loop. If DEP doesn't approve it, all I know is I went to a meeting and there were a lot of really happy neighbors that they were putting in this internal loop. So I'm sure that they think it's like Mr. Mahoney said, not what you're saying. Either it's conditional and you can't build your building until you get your approvals and permits, or it's not.
And we won't know that until somebody looks at that for the township. They just now started to run that by DEP. By the time this comes back for a vote, you can't really engage in all these what-ifs tonight. You'll be able to deal with the issues and the conditions when it comes back, whether it's in 2 weeks or it's more likely the end of May.
Now, the good thing is they've agreed to put in a loop, which they don't have to agree to get this approved. I mean, it's not something that the township's requiring. This is something they've reached out to the community. and they're going to do this to
Right.
benefit the community. So that's great. So it's a positive thing that Eastern's doing.
I am saying
They wanna do
I'm
it.
not
Yeah.
saying it's not a positive. I'm saying it is a positive, but I know that it will be very disappointing if it doesn't happen.
Well, it's going
So
to be a condition. It's going to be money escrowed. So we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, as long as it is a condition, I mean, presently, number 8 is worded that Eastern proceed with due diligence in providing the road as depicted. You know, that's not the same as saying that they
condition.
shall construct
yeah,
a road. And we do require, any saldo plans that come in, we routinely require streets.
No. No.
Yes, we do.
No, this is
Streets, curbs,
No,
sidewalks.
this is completely different, John.
This is not required under SALDO or MPC. Eastern has agreed
I'm
to
not
do
saying
it,
it's
John. They will
required.
do it. They're going to do it.
Excuse me, Nick, I'm not saying that it's required. I'm saying that the board does have the power to require it.
No, not legally.
No, we don't.
No, you don't. Not
Actually,
legally.
when I read the code on Saldo, it actually does say in the code that the Board of Commissioners shall require streets.
Yeah, if you're building on a street.
There's already a street, but we're going to have a
I
difference.
think what we have to recognize is that Eastern is willing to do this for whatever reason. We appreciate that. I think we're just looking for some assurances that it will get done as part of this overall project. If that occurs, Ms. Proney and all the neighbors, I think, will be very pleased and very thankful that Eastern stepped up and did what they've been telling us all along, that they're a good neighbor, and they are. So we appreciate that. And I'm going to trust John Rice as our solicitor to make sure that approval resolution with conditions has enough protection in it so we're covered.
The issue you're going to have to deal with, Commissioner Fisher, is if DEP says that they won't issue a permit. So then that's the only possibility here, but we don't know that. We're not going to know that at least until your next meeting in 2 weeks or whenever they come back. So, you know, that's always a possibility. If the township wants someone to do something that DEP or the federal government won't issue a permit for, maybe there's another alternative. Who knows? Or maybe there's some other road improvements.
My question wasn't that they wouldn't give the permit, just that our experience the last time, when they put in the main entrance off of Eagle Road, it took some additional time for DER, which is now DEP, to issue that permit. It's not that they wouldn't give it, but there were certain conditions and there were some hoops they had to jump through, and I just want to make sure that they're prepared to jump through those hoops if necessary to get it done.
And the resolution's going to have to lay that all out.
Exactly.
As specific conditions. The timing of it, it's hard to tell because it's an outside permit. But that'll be spelled out in the resolution when it comes back for board approval.
Right. Thank you.
End of discussion?
Oh, any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, that's it.
We'll move on to the next item.
Hold on, we have one coming up. I ask that you come up quicker.
Well, I raise my hand. Jim Schneller, I live in St. David's Park condo. I've been utilizing the surrounding roads, directly surrounding roads and all side roads for 30 years and due to this day. I'd like to say that I attended the Planning Commission on Monday, and I was very disappointed that they didn't seem to be taking into consideration some strong points from the public, many members of the public. And the points I made, I want to give you an example, are that the baseball field, apparently, which is the approximate location of this proposed student union, is right where wetlands were. And I asked the Planning Commission if they could put a condition that someone would look into the past of the wetlands, because we need to not encourage a furtherance of what may have been a non-compliant issue. In other words, if you stand at existing wetlands to the east of the baseball field and look to the west, you see the rather swampy wetlands up on the other side of the baseball field. More so, if these are typical wetlands, they're going to need a lot of protection during construction. Has that been addressed yet? And I personally oppose construction completely based on 2 points I can cover very quickly. I think that you should, and I beg you to please implement the long-term, long-range planning available under Section 280-72. There couldn't be a more valuable time to do this. If there are plans for the Valley Forge military spot, let's get the whole picture from Eastern. Let's not work piecemeal. They want nothing more than to work piecemeal because more can be attained from various zoning hearings and stepwise chipping away at township processes. I'd like to ask, especially in regard to floodplain, that the board demands scrutiny by the engineer of the riparian buffer. I don't see any space for riparian buffer at all. And I don't think that would be waived just by a land development decision. I think that should go to zoning. It should be right in front of the board before they do that. What it is the treasured headwaters of the creek that runs down all the way to Gulf Mills, and it's a treasured habitat. Leads me to another point, is that if I could kindly ask, has there been approval obtained from the DEP for the bridge? Is there still a bridge plan to access the new student building? Initially there was a bridge that was going to supply to enable you to supply from Eagle Road.
Jim, you're talking to the board.
Right.
Yeah, we have to ask it to the board.
So is there some kind of crossing necessary to bring supplies to this building that you're looking at tonight?
Is there, Dan?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you.
So you're using existing roads?
Yes.
Nevertheless, I wish that there would be a very hard look taken at something that's there for a reason, the riparian buffer. And the stream was diverted as well when the baseball field was built. So I think you should take into consideration the original position of the stream. And I intend to bring this up to the DEP solely because I think that you need a long-range plan. If there's some way to get you folks to look at the entire situation, let's do it. I don't think that Eastern, they've got a beautiful property, and I have nothing at all against them. I value them as a good neighbor, mostly. But I don't think that, a purchase of a piece of land that's under the zoning code impossible to use for further development should be influencing anybody's decision. And they may well not be interested in such a large student union building if things go badly for them at the Valley Forge, the former Valley Forge level. I object to the board having an obvious posture, or at least more than half of you having an obvious posture of approval already. And it's great that the caucus hearing happens now with public input, which I thank you for. I want you to take into consideration, please, the comprehensive plan, the Wayne Master Plan. We're not talking about a great institution that doesn't have problems. We're talking about a fortunate existence near King of Prussia Road, but that is a very small alleviation because we've got neighborhoods up and down King of Prussia Road, from Biddulph up to the cul-de-sacs going up Pine Tree. These people are all going to be terribly influenced. The intersection doesn't help them. The intersection, we all know what happens with intersections. People are happier, they drive more. If the college gets this, they drive more. And you've got 30, 50, 100 landowners who are suffering. And likewise, if the Valley Forge section was built, that's my name for it, what is going to happen to Beech Tree? What's going to happen to Walnut? I think you have to take a hard look at this. And if this be called an impediment to them intentionally, well, there's a lot of room for you to vote against it. I don't think there's a big question about that.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, finally, there really is no hardship seen here. I object to the fact that the intersection is being used as a sweetener, and a sweetener it is. I don't think that kind of relationship is going to do anything but sit there and kind of lean on the township to cooperate from then on. Once you've established some kind of a payment for an intersection, you can't just go back on it, even if it's part of a deal. What about if it, it's just lingering there? So,
Thank you, Jim.
you have to take a look at the comprehensive plan, and the Planning Commission hasn't been. I'm not criticizing, but I think this is the time to take a hard look. And my proof of that, without going into a ton of details, the fact that Radnor has a very specific problem. When you talk about King of Prussia Road and the roads like Eagle, and then some secondaries are very much like them. They're busy because Radnor has a lot of older secondary roads that are still residential. Some of the nicest properties are on these roads, and they're getting busy as heck. You don't have side roads, shortcuts, or natural places for traffic to balloon. So people are going to be stuck with the traffic. So turn it down. Stop it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for Eastern University. Next, I'd like to move the amendments to the Declaration of Covenants.
Excuse me, Mr. Spengler, we need a letter of extension from the applicant.
Okay.
The current one expires.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. I'll talk to John and.
Okay, so we'll get a letter of extension to what date?
Well, I assume it will not be on for a vote at your next meeting. I'll give an extension beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next one is a motion to amend the Declaration of Covenants to permit the building on the property on Lancaster Pike, the St. David's Shopping Center. This went before the Planning Commission. They've come up with a number of conditions to improve the site. A new sidewalk on the west side of the property to provide an improved pedestrian connection between Lancaster Avenue and the lower and upper portions of the shopping center. An expanded sidewalk at the main entrance connecting Lancaster Avenue to the lower portion of the shopping center with a proposed crosswalk to the Micro Center building. Approximately 62 new plantings within buffer areas adjacent to St. David's Park condominium and the Radnor Crossing apartments. Reconfiguration of the parking and circulation area adjacent to Gennardi's loading area to improve truck access to this area, together with approximately 32 new plantings to improve visual screening of this area from adjacent residential uses. Widen landscape islands and approximately 36 new plantings within the Gennardi's parking lot. A new way finding signage to better direct the manage vehicular traffic within the shopping center. A new fence on the slope between Gennardi's loading area and the existing building labeling Building A on the concept plan, enclosed with the letter. And any donation bins are to be maintained at locations that minimize disruption to neighbors and operations within the shopping center. And I would like to move the approval.
Okay, board comment? I'll just...
When I was looking at the Planning Commission, I didn't sense that there was enough question about traffic. I mean, there's horrible traffic there now, and we're adding additional potential traffic. And I didn't really hear a good discussion of that.
Could we have the applicant come up to respond to questions? I had a few questions also related to traffic. And actually, it might help all of us, since we haven't looked at this in a few, whenever it was. Mr. Brosman, George Brosman is here.
Yes.
There's a diagram that was provided to us. Could you just review that? Do you have one with you?
We're going to put it up on the screen if you give me a
Okay.
moment.
That'd be great. Yeah, I had some questions in reading the original covenants and trying to match the letters and the square footages of the buildings. So I'm actually a little confused.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
I know the applicant was in some time ago looking to locate a restaurant use at this site, a potential restaurant use at this site. Could you just clarify on the drawing, what building would have housed the restaurant?
Yeah, it's there.
Oh.
What we, Ryan Duhannon with the landlord Cambo, 361 Realty, and that would be the 10,000, what we call it, kind of the, right here labeled in the plan, Building A,
Okay.
otherwise known as the 10,000 square foot building.
All right. I'll try to read back through this while you're speaking. I think I was a little confused.
And that was the only place that the restaurant, I believe, would be allowed to locate.
That's correct.
And this was covered under the Second Amendment to the Declaration of Covenants?
I think it would have been the First Amendment. There was a 1991 declaration, and then there was a First Amendment that was approved a year or two ago by you, by the Board of Commissioners, which allowed the restaurant to go into that 10,000 square foot building. And then what we have before you now would be the Second Amendment.
And the question, I think now this leads to Commissioner Nagel's question about traffic and whatnot. The fact that these new uses, proposed uses, would be allowed in the same parking lot in front of Building B raises questions in my mind as well. And I understand you haven't found a tenant for the restaurant use, the proposed, I guess, Building A, but the potential's there, right? The potential's still there for that, and you're still wanting to have that option. Is that right?
They have that option now.
You have that option. So you're not willing to give up that option in seeking this new option?
No, we didn't see any reason to give that up.
Okay.
What I would say is, I'd ask everybody to remember that the declaration that's in place lasts until 2016, and it's a prohibition on, well, the things that we're asking to change. Most of the things we're not asking to change at all, but we're asking to change two parts of that declaration. One said that no additional square footage should be added before 2016, and the other is a more minor one that said there should be no outdoor speakers on the property. We're asking to modify that partially because we think that one of the uses would be a bank with a drive-through, and we know that that would have an outdoor speaker, but the modification is limited to solely that that's the only kind of outdoor speaker there would be, and that it would have to be in a location that wouldn't disturb our residential neighbors. So if the declaration expires after 2016, they could do whatever they want. And even if you amend this declaration, all you're giving us the right to do is to build before 2016, but on the condition that we have to come in for a land development plan. We have to go through that whole process with the Planning Commission and with you, and that's where the specifics of the plan and traffic and things like that would normally come up. That said, we spent a lot of time dealing with the community, and we've actually put together this plan here. The owner has engaged a landscape architect who's with us here tonight to look at the property, to meet with the neighbors on site. We had 2 public meetings that we sent out over 200 letters about, and we've come up with this plan of additional things that we would do if you allow this declaration to be modified. And what the declaration says as drafted is that the owner would agree to show these enhancements that Mr. Spengler referenced and that are shown on this sketch, that they would be required to be shown on any land development plan that we would bring before you. Of course, you would have to review and approve those as part of that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The map and the document, I think, use different terminology for the buildings.
There is a confusion about that. I think what you're referring to is the buildings in the original declaration may have had different letters than are shown on the sketch.
Right, because would you refer to Block C here, it looks like it's existing Building A. And then would you refer to, it says here, crosswalk to Block B, building now occupied by the Micro Center, which I believe is existing Building C.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is some confusion there between the two documents. But I think the document as written, it's clear enough what we're asking to be proposed. Now, we could certainly, if the board desires that when we finalize this, we could just change this exhibit.
Yeah, I'd like to see them align with each other.
Yeah, that's a good idea that when we
Kevin,
finalize.
is this item G? Is this item G?
I'm just looking at 5. And it says any land development plan for the new bank building, which is pretty clear. And it says and/or the addition to Block C building. But there is no addition to Block C building. It says existing Building A with an addition. And then in the next part where it says 5B, it says with a proposed crosswalk to the Block B building now occupied by Micro Center. The Block B building, I believe, is the TJ Maxx and the Bed Bath & Beyond, and what is Block C is Micro Center, even though it here, or
We're showing 2 new crosswalks.
yeah, but what's called C is actually referred to as B here, and what's referred to as C here is actually A on the picture.
I think what we just need to do is change this exhibit to use the letter designations
That
in the
would be-
declaration. And
Yeah, because in my read of it, it says in the Second Amendment, it says that in page 1 of the Second Amendment, this was included in our packet here, item G, it says on November 9, 2009, the board modified covenant B on page 3 of the declaration, which had provided that no restaurant, supermarket, grocery store, or fast food store shall be operated or alcoholic beverages served in either new buildings to permit the operation of the restaurant use, which may include service of alcoholic beverages not to exceed 5,000 square feet in Block C building, which is the Micro Center building. I call it the Micro Center
I think
building.
that's referring to a different exhibit that was attached to that
I
amendment.
see. So, so the new exhibit is not lettered the same way as the old exhibit?
we should have labeled this exhibit as we did
Okay.
the old
That
exhibit.
would be very helpful.
And we'd be happy to correct that.
Yeah, that would be. It's just very confusing.
Yeah,
I'm reading
so-
it, nothing's agreeing with the drawing and the
Yeah.
old covenant, and I'm like,
Ryan is correct that the old declarations referred to an old plan, apparently from the 90s, and they used different letter designations. I'm not sure how this sketch got to be different, but it's certainly, we would certainly agree that when we finalize this document with the solicitor that, we get those letter designations matching up, and I think that would clear up all of that confusion.
Okay. Well, I guess, obviously, if you're going through planning, there'll be requirements to look at traffic and impacts and parking requirements and whatnot. But just my gut is just I'm concerned because restaurants and banks tend to be high traffic businesses in general, and there's already 2 very large retail operations going on in what's building B. And, the fact that we don't have to do this and we can wait until 2016 and you still have to go through that process, at least gives me reason for pause, but I don't speak for the board.
Yeah, I mean, what we would suggest, and we did with the Planning Commission, as well as the neighbors, it seems to me the question really is there any reason to wait until 2016? Would any of the planning factors change? And I think the Planning Commission really agreed that there wouldn't, that if we're going to do this, we've already preliminarily looked at this. We think it would comply with all of the requirements, and that the township gets the benefit and the residents get the benefit of all of these enhancements, which wouldn't be required if we just came forward with a land development that didn't need also the declaration. So we think there's a lot of benefit to the community, and we spent a lot of time working with the neighbors. You can see on this sketch here there's significant enhancement of plantings, improvement of the Gennardi's loading dock, which was a very big concern to people. And these enhancements will cost a significant amount of money to do by the applicant, and they're willing to do that if they can proceed now. Of course, we have to come through the process. We think it would be approvable, but we do have to come for that process. So we would ask that you support this. We think it's good all the way around.
I have a question. I was curious as to why, in the letter that was drafted to us, in section C and D, there are specific numbers of new plantings and trees. 62 new plantings, 38 new trees, but in the proposed agreement, those numbers came out.
Well, the reason for that is in the letter, we tried to reflect what is shown on this exhibit. But in the agreement, if you'll look down at the bottom of that paragraph, it specifically acknowledges the fact that we are required to show this on our plan, but we have no control over whether the township will approve it this way. So I didn't want to be specific about the number of trees in there because we know that we can submit this to the township, but it may not be approved in exactly that way. But we are committing to file a plan and seek approval for this. So that's why it wasn't as specific. And even if you look at that bottom paragraph there, it recognizes that and says that we agree to submit these, but it is recognized that the township has the right to review and approve it, and we will do whatever is required by the township. So that's why the specifics weren't in there.
Well, I watched the Planning Commission with great interest, and I saw, I appreciate that many of the surrounding residents came up and said that communication has gotten better and that they appreciated the outreach, et cetera, et cetera. I also heard some residents say, the conversation going that, this covenant was put in there for a reason, and that the longer that they can delay the increase in traffic and the increase in activity over there, the better. I do see the merit in, if we move ahead now and grant this covenant. I mean, I do see the merit in getting the enhancements, which, if we wait till 2016 and this is just by right and goes through, we're in a much weaker position to get these significant enhancements. So I think that does weigh against waiting. And I do appreciate the fact, when you came here before us a month ago, and nobody had really heard about this, the neighbors didn't know what was going on, that was a difficult position for us to be in, and I do appreciate that you made the effort and it seems like you did some very thorough outreach to the community surrounding this, so thank you.
I would just add that our intention is, on an ongoing level, is to operate in this manner and to communicate better with the township and with the neighbors as we make changes to the center. It's a phenomenal center, it's a phenomenal community, and we certainly are committed to upgrading the shopping center and really operating a first-class shopping center in this location.
I may have missed this, but do you have prospective tenants for this bank building?
We're very optimistic about our leasing prospects. It's difficult to move beyond a certain point with the tenant with this specific issue in place, and that's why we're hoping to move past that so that we can get to that point.
But you wouldn't build it on spec. You'd have a tenant lined up.
No, we would not build on spec.
And for the other outbuilding as well, or extension of the building, that you wouldn't build on spec?
No.
And the rumors have been that Micro Center's leaving.
I honestly have no knowledge of that being the fact. They do very well in this location.
Okay, so those are just unfounded rumors.
I would say that that's an accurate statement at this point. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any of the residents coming out to speak to us on this? Hey. Well, so I did see some of the planning meeting, and this is on our agenda to amend. So residents came out to the planning commission, said their piece, but none of them have come out tonight. Yes, 1, 2. Well, I'm talking about residents who live there, adjacent.
The residents live there were satisfied with the plan.
I've been in communication with many.
I'm just making sure that the public was fully aware that this was on.
Yes, this was publicly noticed as well as the planning commission.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure.
Just to recap, we were here in January. There was some discussion then. You referred it to the Planning Commission. We went to the Planning Commission on February 7th, had an extensive discussion. A lot of people came out. We requested to be tabled at that time so that we could do more community outreach. That's when the client hired Byrne Pansack, the landscape architect, because most of the comments had to do with landscaping. Byrne came out and looked at the site. He met with various individual neighbors. They walked the site. I was even at one of the meetings. Ryan was at the meeting. Ryan has had input and feedback with other people that weren't at that meeting. And then we had 2 separate community meetings where we used the list provided by the township. We mailed out to over 200 neighbors. Both planning commissions were noticed to those same people, and the notice for the last planning commission meeting also indicated that this meeting may take place. So I have never done as much community outreach for 10,000 square feet or less ever, really, and we've done a lot here, and I think the result is a good one that most people are happy with. In addition to, we didn't even talk about here, they've already done things that they've promised the neighbors. They promised the neighbors on the Gennardi side to already plant some of the buffer back, which is, I think, already been done. And the same thing with the Ivan Avenue side. They've already enhanced that buffer just as a sign of good faith. They've moved the donation bins. That's not even counted in the numbers for the plants and things that we talked about. So we feel like we've come a really long way and done a lot for this, and we appreciate the input that we got.
All right, I appreciate that. Jim, could you take off the drawing? The drawing's still on the monitor. I don't know if that's what's being broadcast. Well, just so when people come up to speak, I'd like them to be on camera rather than. Okay. Yeah, I'll stand with what I just said. Video of, yeah, come on up.
Okay. My name's Cheryl Tamola. I was on the Planning Commission when this covenant was done. And if you've watched the Planning Commission meeting, you've heard me speak about this. I'd rather not see this changed. I think I've made that clear. However, and I have misgivings about there being a restaurant here, but you passed that, even though I spoke against that the last time, because we're beginning to be like the food court of the main line, with the whole Acme shopping center becoming food. This is food. Then we have all the restaurants on North Wayne Avenue. It's kind of a little too much, be that as it may. And I'm interested in the way that in land use on a larger scale, what we offer to people. I don't want to be just the underbelly of the main line, eating. However, one of the things that I'm softening my stance toward these fellows, I've gotten to know them well now, is that it's perilous for people to walk there. When they first developed this, and I know that it's not the same people who were there in 1991 when I was on the Planning Commission and did this, but I tried to get them to have some kind of pedestrian access on the west side of the development, and they said no, that it was too much trouble or whatever, and it was passed without it. But it's dangerous now if you go by there, and I hope this will happen also through the land use. It's kind of like, I feel in some way that we're being held hostage, that if you want to make it safer, we kind of have to do this now and not wait 5 years. And it's a pity that people can't do the right thing in the first place. And I know that they've done good things for the neighbors already by landscaping around them, but as I've said before, I'm kind of looking at the bigger picture here, and I'd like the community to be safer. I'd like to have a better retail mix, and Lord knows we don't need another bank. But be that as it may, I'm very interested in having it be safer. Every time I walk by there are people walking from the buildings on the north side of Lancaster Avenue to get to Gennardi's to eat, to buy food for their lunches, or or go shopping at their lunch hours. And it's nice that they're out walking, but they have to walk in the cartway. So it's really up to you. But these are my thoughts back and forth about this, that I think that it's a sin that the right thing can't be done without holding us hostage, but be that as it may.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Hi, Jim Schneller, St. David's Park. For once, I'm a neighbor. And but your 500-foot rule, I practically have to have my living room before you let me be a neighbor. But I am really distressed by this. And I wrote the Planning Commission in the start, giving them a lot of theory about the fact that the original covenant was wisely written, because what it does is it creates a beautiful greenway, if you will. People drive, everybody who drives to Wayne from the Blue Route, and we get a lot of visitors now, knows why property values are high, because there's a ton of trees. And what we have is a 1,000-foot stretch with the most tasteful shopping center I've seen anywhere south of East Orange. I mean, it's a beaut. And that's because it's set back. Why can't we enjoy 4 more years of setback? Who knows what the Planning Commission is going to be like in 4 years? Why should we assume that these are needed, where the economy will be, or how tastes have changed? I also object because I wasn't included on these meetings. I don't know. I got a right to know, and I saw the list of neighbors sent, and I have to say that only one person in my building received notice. That tells me that someone wasn't paying attention, or maybe was paying close attention. The only other time I have, quote, been a 500-foot neighbor, I also was excluded from neighborhood meetings, and I object to this strongly. I think that you're dealing with a covenant, and with all respect, and it's great that neighbor meetings happened, where have they been for 10 years? I don't have a lot of gripes, and I'll have to tell you, there's dedicated crosswalks were put in over there 2 years ago, I guess with the new corridor, the Villanova-Wayne corridor computerized, and you see 5 times as many people walking from the Radnor Corporate Center to lunch. You never saw that. So that crosswalk has very little danger except missing a sidewalk. The sidewalk wasn't there in the original covenant. I don't understand it. What we have is sweeteners. Should we allow someone to walk in with a couple of sweeteners and change a covenant? This isn't a land use issue. You're looking at a covenant that the ladies and gentlemen before you made for strong reason. And now we have, starting at 3 o'clock, it's not 4 o'clock, sometimes it's 3:30, people standing all the way back to Chamonix. So you're going to have more sludge trying to, and budge and hem and haw, people trying to come in and out of this place. And food just happens to be plentiful. Banks are plentiful. And we can't tell a property owner what to do with their property, but when we have a chance to keep the traffic down, let's keep Radnor beautiful. We have an item on the agenda tonight regarding the Darby Creek.
Wait a minute, we're just talking about this now. We're not talking about the Darby Creek.
We're at the headwaters of the creek. We're talking about a lot more pollution with all that.
Mr. Chairman, this is irrelevant to the conversation that's here.
Okay, well, Jim.
Well, no, I'm talking about the comprehensive plan, the fact that comfort and environment are influenced strongly by extra people, extra customers within any given quarter mile square. And that's always a consideration.
Thank you.
We've got, if I could look at the plan, I don't want to get involved with this because I think that what we've got is talk about Greenway just to convert a really strict covenant issue. It's a covenant. And they want to convert that into some kind of nebulous land use proposal. They've treated it as a land use proposal. They brought in neighbors. They didn't even bring in all the neighbors. And they're steering everyone away from the fact that the prior commissioners wrote an agreement, and it was agreement between the township. This wasn't like a covenant between 2 landowners to allow a driveway through the other fellow's land. You've got all these responsibilities about comfort and environment. So I'm really pleading with you not to approve this. It's only 4 years they're looking at. They've obviously made an effort to appease some neighbors, but I think these are select neighbors who thought they could show up or they should show up. No one I know even knew about it.
Mr. Chairman?
Jim, yeah.
Cover
I'm
this
going
ground.
to ask, Jim, did you say you did not receive notice of the discussion at the Planning Commission?
Well, I watch the agendas, but I haven't gotten any notice whatsoever.
But, Mr. Ballman, do we have a requirement?
I believe the notices were sent to the owners.
I see, property owners.
And it was sent by Mr. Brosman as well.
But do we have a requirement when we're modifying a covenant?
No, we do not.
There is no requirement.
Well, I took a copy to the person most directly affected and talked about it was yours, and I asked her to give it to the homeowners association to distribute to everyone.
Okay. And so even though we don't have a requirement, I think in this case, because the covenant really was there to protect the neighbors more so than the township, it sounds like everyone went above and beyond the requirements.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that, because I think I'd like to hear that everyone's been notified. I can't explain why you did not receive notice. It may have been on the bulletin boards, who knows? That might be an issue between you and your landlord.
Are you the owner or renter, Jim?
Renter.
Well, they send it to
You may have a beef with your landlord.
Well, we've got statements now that the association said they distribute. My agent would have told me immediately. Did they send it to Taiwan? Because my agent gets all the mail.
Okay. Well, we can't answer those questions, though, but thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Well, I've got more.
Okay.
I happened to look into the distances. Now, the distance of my apartment is not, well, it's not 500 and it's not 750. It's over 500 and under 750.
Notice is not the issue, Jim.
Well, I was told by community development that they use a software that does a very accurate circular delineation and sends to everyone. So did they use a 650-foot? I think if there's a claim that the neighbors are involved, let's hear about it.
Mr. Chairman, if there's a point of relevance, I'm not sure where we're
It's relevant because the planning commission listened to two neighbors. Now, if
Jim, this was not a plan approval. This whole thing is about amending a declaration of covenants.
Right.
And as I understand it, we're not required to do any notice. However, we knew better than to do no notice. The applicant has gone out and done notice. I believe, I don't know if we have.
I've done notice.
Sounds like the commissioners have worked to make sure that everyone is aware.
Did you drop me one off?
No, I talked to the people that live directly up against it, and I asked them to take a copy to the homeowners association to distribute.
And this was pretty well covered. I mean, the fact that I actually got to see it on the planning
Notice is not the
commission.
issue, Jim. So go on with something else.
Well, it is, because if only two neighbors showed up at planning commission, and one of them is a leader of a community organization.
Now, I know 2 or 3 people that talk to me about this that live in St. David's Park. They called me on the phone, talked to there were more people than that.
And the major point is that all this talk about neighbors is trying to convert what is a very cut and dry issue.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate it.
One more thing. I'm afraid that I have to disagree that it is a perilous center. As I've said, the pedestrian issue is now being somewhat misrepresented as something wonderful is going to be amended.
Jim, it's been perilous for years. People should not walk in the road. They should have a sidewalk where they can have one. If you have a sidewalk, it's a lot better than walking in the road.
Yes, but this amounts to someone holding back, holding on to sweeteners until they want to do something.
These are
so
new,
you're telling every business
These are
in the
new
future,
property owners. These are new property owners.
No, they've been here for ages.
No.
And I don't object to them until this
They
came
just
up.
bought the property a number of years ago. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your comments. Thank
No,
you.
You're not getting rid of me yet.
Well, we're trying to. Jim, that's it. Come on.
You've got a duty to turn it down.
Thank you. We appreciate
I
it.
ask you to, and think about the people who live in the surrounding.
I represent the people, Jim.
Jim, in the essence of time, we do have quite a bit of items to get to. If you could be more concise and wrap up.
He's done.
You are.
Sinclair Shopping Center has been sitting there vacant.
We're not talking about Sinclair Shopping Center. There's nothing to do with
The
it.
restaurant sat vacant for a year and a half after allowance and
not talking
talk
about
of
that.
liquor. Now, what kind of bait do you need? So we've
Mr.
got,
Chairman, point of relevance, I mean, the point of the
Jim,
topic
Jim, I'll
is
ask you.
Well, this is my last
the
point, so
plaza.
let-
This
and
is,
I-
we're
the
off
rest to
topic.
finish.
We do need to kind of.
Jim, there's other people.
Can you make this your last point of the night?
There's been a dozen presentations here.
You've
let's
come
go,
up
Jim, we got it.
every single item, and
Mr.
you're
Schneller.
repeating the same points over and over again, and it does get
This is not
frustrating.
true.
Well,
Okay.
in every single one,
All right,
you've
make your last
talked about the
comment, sit down, Jim.
comprehensive
Thank you.
plan.
Okay, Mr. Schneller, just in
Okay.
the essence of time, we would like to get home before midnight tonight. I appreciate it if you can make a concise comment.
This was
Thank you.
needless, because I'm on the last point, which is that with 8 retail units available, the economy's off. And here we are allowing someone to protrude into a place they agreed not to. Just so they have a special circumstance and to occlude our view and bring pollution.
Thank you.
So please turn it down, and thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your comments. Any further public comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, I would just like to thank this group for their efforts here. I think they've listened to the residents and really have reached out and made some additions here that I think will actually create some pedestrian safety items here. So I do want to say appreciate that. I would recommend that this is approved, but also I think to go back to one point, and I think Commissioner Fisher had mentioned, not more people being here. I think this is something the board has to look at, because if for residents to come here, they would have had to sit here until at least 10 o'clock tonight, which really is an example of we really need to try to shorten the time of these meetings here, because again, a lot of residents to be able to be here till at least 10 o'clock at night.
The residents would have been here if they were against it, if
so-
they weren't pleased when they left the planning commission. That's when they come here.
Oh, no, wait.
No, Jim, no.
No.
All right, we're all done.
We're done public comment.
We're done. I would just like to say, as a commissioner from that ward, that we're getting a lot of plannings, we're getting a lot of improvements, plus we're also getting economic development we're talking about. All over the United States, shopping centers are failing, and they're empty, and we're losing
Bill, you're
tax
preaching to
dollars.
the choir. Call the
So,
question.
all right, I'll move the motion.
Yeah, it's already been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Noting that Commissioner Spengler made the original motion, Commissioner Mahoney second. You have Resolution 2011-52. Bill.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is resolution to review of Eastern traffic impact. I'll move the approval of the resolution.
Comment from the board.
It's clarifying that this study is paid for by the applicant, right?
Microphone.
Sorry. The two traffic engineers, or one traffic engineer and from Gilmore are here tonight. And this is a specific appointment involving the Eastern project, the intersection, and what we've talked about earlier tonight. You have an existing professional services reimbursement agreement. So whatever work, they're well aware that, that goes passed through, and the applicant would cover any costs that are incurred. Whatever happens with PennDOT, whatever else has to be done so that this is engineered and the township and the board gets what they want to get. So in accordance with those rates, but it'll be passed through.
Any commissioner have comment?
I don't have any, well, I'm glad we're going to do this. I think this is an important step to
Public?
make sure.
All right, let's vote.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Spengler's motion, Commissioner Mahoney second on that.
Next, I would like to move resolution 2011-38, award a bid for street maintenance contract to low bidder Charles A. Higgins, Son, for maintaining and repair township streetlights at a cost not to exceed $13,068 for 2011-2012.
Moving it?
I move it.
I'll second it.
All right.
Any commissioner comment on that? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Spengler's motion, Commissioner Mahoney second on that.
Next is a resolution to purchase an asphalt hot box at a cost of $17,329 under the CoStar's state contract with township funds to be allocated from the 2011 Public Works Capital Fund, and I'll move the approval.
Second.
Commissioner comment?
That's going to have to be disposed of, the existing one. Do we have funds put aside for that disposal? Because it is an asphalt box after all.
Not that I know of. If I could possibly bring it to recycle metal somehow, I will do that. We'll take care of that. I'm going to look into that, getting rid of it.
Is there a potential to sell this as is?
No.
As a functioning, non-functioning, but
Well, it's over 17 years old. We have a problem with the thermostat, the igniter. It's really dangerous. We had to fabricate parts for it just to keep it working, and we're still having issues with it. And I think it'd be too unsafe to try to sell it to someone.
okay, agreed. All right, scrap. All right, any commissioner comment? Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0, noting Commissioner Spengler's motion and Commissioner Mahoney's second.
That's under Public Works and Engineering.
Thank you, Commissioner Spengler. Commissioner Curley, Community Development.
First item is the introduction of ordinance 2011-14 to set a public hearing amending administrative lot line changes. So brief explanation. This idea emerged from a community development subcommittee meeting. The first change was to interpret language, or to ensure that the way that we wanted the language of the ordinance to be interpreted was in the ordinance itself. So there was some discrepancy regarding interpretation. So that's just a sort of administrative to make the ordinance do what we wanted to do. And then the second item involved making it harder to do it administrative, or more difficult to do it administrative lot change. The idea was that if somebody was consolidating 4 properties or changing the use, as in the use and area as in 5B, we didn't want them to do an administrative change. We wanted them to go through the usual process. So it went to a subcommittee. It came to this board. This board recommended, we sent it to, and then it went through various levels of the county planning commission. We sent it to planning. Planning came back with the recommendation, so it's up for us to introduce it. So I move the introduction of the ordinance.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any commissioner comment?
Board, I just need to make a comment, please. It was brought to my attention, I spoke to this with Mr. Rice, that there's language missing in the ordinance. There should be, on the second page of 2, there should be a C, some language there inserted that the Planning Commission recommended that's missing in this ordinance. So, John Rice, is it correct, in 2 weeks we should reintroduce this then?
We'll bring it back. Matt and I need to compare our notes on what the final draft was. It may have to go back to the County Planning Commission again, but I would suggest, at least for tonight, until we're clear on what all the subsections were, that you just table this and we'll bring it back in 2 weeks if it's ready to be brought back.
Move the
Okay.
table.
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded. I just want to comment. I'm glad there was something missing, because when I read it, it seemed like there was something missing. But I want to make a comment that the way this B reads currently, it says when the area of the proposed consolidated parcel exceeds twice the minimum lot size for the zoning district, and there is a change of use or an expansion of an existing commercial or industrial building. I think that missed the essence of what I was asking for. This basically says that when the minimum lots are consolidated, they exceed, when lots are consolidated and they exceed twice the minimum size, this is only going to, because of the logic implied, the and statement, this seems to only apply to commercial and industrial districts, but not residential. And the original flavor that I was looking for was that this would apply to both residential and commercial. So I would suggest, since we're going to go back through the process again, that we split B into C and D, so that B would read, when the area of the proposed consolidated parcel exceeds 2 times the minimum lot size for the zoning district, C, when there is a change of use, and D, an expansion of an existing commercial or industrial building. This way, it covers both the residential requirements that I had in mind, but also the commercial, and it creates this caveat that if there's a change in use or an expansion of an existing commercial or industrial building, that administratively this can't be done. I hope that is in agreement with the missing C. I don't know what is missing in C, the present C, the C that is missing, but I'm suggesting splitting B into 3 parts, and as I stated. So I'd like that to be part of this motion. That is my amendment to the motion to table, I guess.
Well, all you can do is table it. You can't amend the motion.
Okay, fine, then.
You can't discuss it. You're supposed to
John,
vote.
That's fine.
Just work with John Rice.
Yeah,
I would
I'm
suggest
asking
you
John
give-
Rice right now.
Give Matt and I your comments.
Sure.
By email, and
I just have issue with that. I mean, this went through a long process, including Planning Commission. Essentially, that would mean that
all de minimis administrative changes for commercial and industrial buildings this would no longer be allowed. So I don't know if that was the intent, but this went through a process.
Mike?
Sorry. This went through a process, and if you want the changes to it, then I think you've got to start the whole process again.
But I think the point I'm making right now is this is going back to planning? Yes?
No, not going back to planning.
It was at planning, the confusion, as I understand it, and Matt and Mr. Gemmer brought it to my attention earlier tonight, that there was some other addition that the Planning Commission in February, meeting I was not at, made some other edit to this. And I just, before we introduce this is the amendment that the county reviewed, the one you have in front of you tonight. So I don't know what happened from the February Planning Commission meeting to what was sent to the county to tonight, but
So this does need to go back to the county planning.
if we're going to change it, but what I need to know, and I think Matt and I I don't know if Mr. Malloy was at that Planning Commission meeting, we need to make sure we got we have all the Planning Commission's comments, and then we bring it back to the board.
You're not changing it, you're just putting it the way it was supposed to be when it came from the Planning Commission.
Correct. If it was different than this, and I'm not sure it was.
But as I recall, when this left the board, just to clarify Commissioner Curley's concern, when this left the board, I thought I made my point pretty clear that this item, this B item, was to protect us from the consolidation of residential lots and commercial lots, not just commercial. And because of the word "and," it only applies to commercial lots. And that completely leaves the residential lot up to...
Well, that B applies, but A applies to any, when more than 4 parcels are involved. That applies to residential or commercial. Correct?
When I read B, the logic implied, because of the word "and,"
All right. Well,
and there is a change of use or
John, why don't you
expansion.
go get your comments to John?
Well, I think
No,
this-
John, I agree with B,
Yeah.
but I'm saying you have an A and a B. An A applies to any
Sure.
kind of residential, and B applies to commercial or industrial.
But I'm trying to cover you could have 4 very small parcels consolidated, and they could still be less than twice the area. So I think the idea was that if a residential property owner wanted to consolidate, suppose a small lot next to their home, they could do that administratively. However, if you had someone acquire piecemeal multiple residential lots, and in essence decide to redevelop that area, they would be able to do that administratively. So, because it doesn't cover it in B. B is only covering commercial. So it kind of missed the whole point.
No, I don't think it missed the whole point. I mean, I think that's part of what was captured in A. And then I think you're also...
Can I make a point of procedure here? By the way, you got to put your mic on. I thought that when you made a motion to table and it's seconded, that you acted on the motion.
No, that's
We've
inaccurate.
now, well,
That is accurate. I brought it up a couple times,
No,
but we continue to let people discuss.
You can have public,
Also,
you
it's
can have
it's
comment.
inaccurate.
no, it's not inaccurate because that's
Motion to
Robert's
table
Rules
cannot
of
be
Order.
discussed, you vote on it.
And we've gone on for 10 minutes now discussing something which should have been voted on.
A motion to table applies to, this was not a motion to a table. That was a...
I said motion to
Motion to
table, it
table.
was
But that's not
seconded.
okay, very well. I mean, a motion to table applies to, like, emergency circumstances that end a meeting. This was a motion to
So
move the vote.
table is
to a
With all
indefinite.
due, all due respect, this is the reason why we're pushing 11 o'clock at this particular point, and it happens every single meeting, is that we are not disciplined enough to follow rules of procedure here. We just go on, and people talk, say whatever they want to say, and it makes no sense.
John, I
Okay.
mean, we brought this
So
up
we
before.
can-
Technically,
Motion to table.
Yeah,
it's not debatable.
If there's a second, then it's tabled, and then you're done with the motion.
Yeah, but we permit people to talk on and on a motion to table, but technically, under Robert's rules,
Right.
if you called it a motion to table, gets it off the table right away, you second it, you vote on it, nobody gets to say anything.
It's put on the table, and then you're done with the motion.
Said a motion to table.
I think Mr. Curley's making a good point. Motion to table is indefinite. Motion to postpone sets a date for when the item will come back to the board. So in essence, a motion to table I believe, would make it indefinite, so.
Until you take it off the table again by motion. Put it back on the table.
I think the point was that there's some disagreement with the final draft, and I'm looking at the Planning Commission minutes, and the Planning Commission references a paragraph C, which is not in the minutes. So I'm not sure what the recommendation was. We need to bring back to you what the Planning Commission's recommendation was, what that paragraph C was, and then you can have your discussion instead of having it tonight, because we're not sure what they said. So we'll do that.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought this was going back through the planning process, and that is why I brought up my point. So I apologize for that, but anyway, we can go ahead and vote on this table.
It's going
So
to
all those in
Delaware
favor
County-
say
it's going to
aye.
Delaware County Planning.
Aye. Opposed? Motion to table carries 7-0. And that motion was, actually, I think it was Commissioner Mahoney
and Spengler.
and Spengler.
It's going to be very easy for Linda.
All right.
We need a third person. Mahoney to Spengler to Schaefer. How's that?
No, it's easy.
Like a double play.
That's the chance.
All right.
To
We're,
Nagel, triple play.
you're up.
Bob, do you want to tell us about S?
In the packets, Matt had prepared the planning firm proposals and the process, so everyone does have a copy of that. That actually details the process that had taken place. In regards to the review of the planning proposals, it's our recommendation to, which would go to T, as a motion to set May 3rd, 2011, meeting at 6:15 for the presentation of the final 4 planning firm proposals.
Is that a Tuesday night?
Yes.
Are you giving them any guidance, Bob? Half-hour presentation, 15-minute, 30-minute presentation
Yes,
for
Matt,
15
I'll let you
Q&A?
take that.
Mr. Higgins, I've told the firms to keep the 20, 30 minutes for the PowerPoint presentation and then 15 minutes for questions. I'm anticipating 45 minutes for each firm. I hope to not go over that for each one, and maybe at the end, save
It'll be a
questions.
test of their rigor if they stick to the rules.
Well, they were good the first time. They had 10 minutes and they did that, so I get a bonus here.
All right, I'm tired. You can pass anything you want now, Bob. Just put it on the table and I'll vote for it.
It's only 10:30. We're doing well.
I promise to be brief.
Time's up.
No, you have to give me time. I hardly talk. I'm Barb Krause-Blackney. I live on Walnut Avenue in Wayne. And I'm really kind of betwixt and between about what I want to say here, but I was surprised to learn that there was a committee in existence that I didn't know about to initially review the RFPs that were received from planning firms. I was aware that an RFP had been issued, but I had followed for some time in the township the process to look at reviewing and improving our zoning code, and I was aware that a committee existed that was disbanded this past summer, and in fact, I was aware they existed because it was announced at several meetings that the committee existed, and when they were meeting, even though the meetings weren't open to the public, they existed to get some sort of a draft zoning revision to a point that it could be presented to the public for input. And I attended that public meeting. And, you know, it was clear that it was a working committee meeting, as I just observed with the proposal from Agnes Irwin recently, where, you know, there was still a lot of, certainly not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not consent, but there was dissent still among the committee. It certainly wasn't a done deal what they were bringing forward, but they were coming forward for public comment. And my time was totally disregarded at that meeting by some folks who showed up who had an agenda to just see that that committee be disbanded because of perceived or alleged conflict of interest and lack of transparency, et cetera. And then, you know, so the committee was eventually disbanded. And then there was a proposal to have a second committee formed and a request for nominations. And I actually had made a nomination to that committee, and that was tabled at some point. And then, lo and behold, I found out there was a committee working to review these proposals that actually was indeed a secret. It had never been announced to the public. And there were, an assortment of folks on the committee, some of whom were citizens at large. So I questioned how they were appointed to the committee. And I would, question why there wasn't. They were both from the same district, and it would seem that we might want some representation from every district if we were to have citizens at large. So that said, I do think that every time we go through something like this, we cost our taxpayers money. We disrespect the time of the folks who have put in a lot of time and effort already on these processes. So that's why I say I stand here betwixt and between whether to ask that you consider disregarding the work of this new committee to date. But I do want to point out that there is a list of firms that submitted proposals. They've already been called down to 8 and then to 4. And 2 of those 4 actually have had not 1 but 2 interviews with this committee. So it seems somewhat to be perhaps an unlevel playing field. And I just want to, I have the utmost respect for Bob and Matt, and they're aware of my concerns about this. But I think it should be put out there for your consideration how to proceed. It's not consistent with what we've been talking about at most public meetings recently about transparency and openness and addressing perceived or real conflict of interest. And I think the argument could be made equally for some of the folks on this committee that there could be conflicts of interest. So it's your legacy, and I just ask you to take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I want to comment on this. I think we're still on item S, because we don't have a motion yet. We're still on item S on the agenda.
You said something was a mess.
No. I want to comment. This process has gotten kind of clouded. I think in the end, everyone has good intentions, and I think what motivated the various things that have occurred with this code review committee over the last year the motivations have been pretty pure. We want to get the process started. So what I'm going to suggest is that this board, by resolution at our next meeting, form a code review committee. And this code review committee will be appointed with individuals by the board, just like we do any other code review committee. And during that process, we'll interview those candidates and we'll appoint those committee members. I would like to do this because I think in the past I've seen the opportunity for steering committees to work with planners. So even if we hire a planner, we will still want a steering committee to work with that planner. And I think it would be important to form a new committee. And it can have members that served on the first committee and this administrative committee that had been assembled by staff. I don't really have a preference, but the point is we do owe it to the public to make it public and to make it a public process by appointing them in public. And this way, we strip away all this confusion and all this theory that someone's trying to do something behind closed doors. We don't have any, as far as I can tell, all the activity in the last year around this issue was born out of the desire to get it done. But it was a little short-sighted in some ways, and we should have followed a process. This board doesn't normally form committees on more than one committee every couple of years, and all of a sudden in the last year or two we've had to form a couple. So at this point we're learning that process. But I will suggest that on our next agenda that we actually have a resolution appointing or the creation of this committee, a code review steering committee, and then advertise the positions to the public, and then this board interview and then appoint members to that code review steering committee.
Wouldn't the planning commission do this?
Well, they can, but I really believe, my experience, and I'll talk about Garrett Hill, is that if we had relied, just hear me out, if we had relied just on the hired planner who had a very narrow budget, the budget was around $50,000, That budget was amplified tenfold by the work of the steering committee, because that steering committee met on a weekly basis for 3 to 4 hours a week, and all their meetings were public. Not all of them were televised because they couldn't use this room as often as they wanted to, but when they could be televised, they were. But the meetings were always open to the public, they were always advertised, and this board voted for and voted to create and to appoint all the members of the Garrett Hill Steering Committee. I just want to see us do the same thing, because this code review steering committee should be formed, and we should honor those who have served in different capacities on this issue, whether being appointed by the board or appointed by staff. We can honor them and interview them again, but if we feel comfortable with them as appointees and we don't see the conflicts of interest that have been raised, then we form a committee. And the important part of that is, if we do that by vote in public, the public will have a chance to speak on that appointment. So that is my suggestion. We can keep looking in the past at all the issues that were raised, but quite frankly, we do need to hire a planning firm, and we do need, in my opinion, we need to hire a planning firm, and we really do need a dedicated steering committee that can devote the time to this. And if half the members of that committee are from the planning commission, that's fine. If the planning commission wants to take on this task, and they communicate to us they would rather take on the task, that's great, but I don't think they're going to have the time and the energy to devote to this task. It's very complex, adjusting and amending code.
Oh, my God.
So if I talk long enough, they'll all show up.
Go to bed.
So my preference is that we, staff give us a recommendation and that this work be done at Planning Commission.
Okay. We have 2 ideas on the table. Any other public or board comment on this issue?
What was Don's idea again?
Staff give us a recommendation. I don't think we need to have a meeting on May 3rd. Staff gives us a recommendation. They pick a firm. We select it at a regular meeting, and the work is done at the Planning Commission.
Well, are we going to pick the firm, interview and pick them? Why can't we do it?
Well,
Your mic's not on. Your mic's not on. Your mic's not on.
Staff gives us recommendations for transportation engineers. Staff gives us recommendations for consultants all the time. So in my opinion, we shouldn't do this one any differently. Staff looks at the firm, staff makes a recommendation, and then we either approve it or don't approve it.
Well, those are 2 separate issues. What John is talking about and what Don is talking about are 2 separate issues.
That's the whole point. I'm offering an alternative to what John is offering.
Don's alternatives, and I have said this myself in the past, that the Planning Commission's role is to amend our code. But because we're looking at a comprehensive rewrite of at least 1 or 2 sections of our code, I suggest that we have a dedicated code review steering committee to do that.
We have a planning commission, John.
Yeah,
That's their
I mean,
job.
I would like to agree with you because you are absolutely right. That should be the way this goes. However, we have tried that twice now. And this is just such a divisive issue, and for whatever reason, there's such a lightning rod of adversity surrounding this issue. I don't want to waste the time of trying that a 3rd time and having all of this consternation. I mean, I think taking it out of this appointing and who gets appointed and who has conflicts situation and putting it into our planning commission is, at this point, the most efficient way to go.
When the issue arose, the manager was very responsive and recognized that there could be a potential problem here, and he came up with, I thought, was a very creative, workable solution, which is to take the work that has been done to date, making sure that there hasn't been any monkey business with the planning firms that are being proposed, and he's assured us that that has occurred, that there was none. So if we take over from here, we know that it's going to get done properly, publicly, without any muss or fuss. So I think Barbara's points are very well taken about in the future. I think we need to be more open, more transparent, more public in this process. But given what has occurred, I think much like our disbanding the earlier committee because we didn't want to have it tainted in any way, we should do the same thing here. So that committee is going to be disbanded, and we're just going to take over the process at this particular point. I'm satisfied after talking with Bob that those firms that have been selected for the final 4 are not in anybody's camp, so to speak, that they're professionals, that they're willing to give us their best advice. So I think we should move ahead with what the manager has proposed for us.
Okay, any other board comment on this item and the issue? How about any comment from staff at this point on this issue? Is anyone still awake out there?
Hear from the public. Go to public.
All right, I'm being polite, Bill.
Just to be clear, Bob, your proposal and your recommendation is to move forward with the May 3rd meeting and have these 4 firms present.
That's correct. And then this way, this gives a comfort level with the Board of Commissioners that this is the right firm that you feel comfortable with, as well as it's a public process as well.
Okay, so do we have a motion to
Well,
set
we're on
the May 3rd?
discussion, so you got to
T
give
is
the
the
public.
Well, I know.
Yeah, T's the
Okay.
motion.
I was going to give the public comment during the motion.
All right, I'll move to set the meeting for Tuesday, May 3rd, 2011, 6:15 for presentation of the planning firm proposal.
Second.
Okay, any
Third.
board comment? Any public comment? I see a member of the planning commission here.
Oh,
today.
John, don't do that, John.
Well, you know, I believe Sue came all the way out.
She could have
Susan
volunteered
Stern.
herself instead of you.
She wanted to talk to
I'm being
Susan
polite.
Stern,
That's what she
We're going to
said.
wrap up in
18
5
Lawrence
Just
more
Lane.
stop by, driving by, right?
You guys
Yeah,
are
sure.
must see TV at home at my house, let me tell you. Real
I'd
quick,
be in bed by then.
I was
sound
on this
asleep.
subcommittee that did whittled the 12 down to 4. I have no problem with you all taking it public. Transparent, great, go for it. We did our work, we were of service, happy to do it. Whatever makes you all feel comfortable and keeps the process moving forward. And several members of the committee who were also on it felt the same way. Just wanted to share that.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. All right, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 6-1, noting Commissioner Spengler's motion, Mahoney second, and Commissioner Curley's vote against. Parks and Recreation, Commissioner Nagel.
A couple announcements before I get into the agenda items. There are spring break camps for basketball at Sulpizio, chess camp at Ithan Elementary, soccer camp at Ditmar, and they're all the week of April 18th. There's an Arbor Day celebration. It's going to take place Tuesday, April 26th at 6 p.m. at Friends of Radnor Trails Park and along the Radnor Trail. Last meeting, we approved the fee issues for the Katie Sampson lacrosse tournament, and that's taking place on April 30th at Radnor High School. May 1st is the Chester Valley Sportsman's Club Youth Trout Derby. It's at Sawmill Park. And the kickoff for summer program registration starts on May 2nd, and the brochure and information will be online April 25th. Also,
Are your dates accurate for the fishing tournament? Because it used to be a Friday and a Saturday. I think you gave a Sunday. Did they change
these
it?
were the dates that was provided to me by Tammy Cohen, so if they're not right, we can ask her to correct us. Yeah. The Easter egg hunt that was yesterday, I guess, they had about 40 participants, and everybody had a lot of fun. And then thanks to the Radnor Conservancy, Friends of Radnor Trails, and the Radnor Historical Society, there are now 2 more signs, the historical signs along the Radnor Trail. One's at the old West Wayne station, and the other is located at the old Sugartown Road station. They were installed Friday, April 8th. I have some pictures, but I'm not going to take time to show them. And special thanks to, not Commissioner, but the other John Fisher and Greg Pritchard. They worked with the Township staff on that project. Now for the agenda items. Discussion and consideration of motion regarding the West Wayne Cemetery. This is from the Open Space Committee, so Elaine, do you want to give a brief overview?
Sure. I actually don't know that we need to make a motion on this because it's really a recommendation for inaction rather than action.
Yeah.
But this is just a report, a recommendation that came out of the Open Space Committee. It was discussed at our January 19th meeting, tabled at that meeting, and then discussed again at the March 23rd meeting. Basically, we address the issue of whether to pursue acquisition for no fee, but acquisition nonetheless, of the West Wayne Cemetery that is on West Wayne Avenue, close to where it hits Conestoga. It's an orphan property. And we were asked to consider whether this would be an appropriate open space acquisition. We considered, the Radnor Historical Society came in and talked to us about it. The Parks and Rec Board had made a recommendation, and we applied our 1991 criteria, open space acquisition criteria. We recommend at this point to not pursue acquisition, as it is not an appropriate purchase or acquisition under our current standards. However, we would like to see this board ask the Open Space Committee to revisit this issue once our new open space plan is completed. In anticipation of the fact that that new plan will have a more thorough analysis and contain some more current thinking about non-traditional open space, and what the criteria you would use to assess, the benefits of that, and we'll have better guidance from our community as to whether this is a beneficial open space acquisition. And then finally, we wanted to encourage the groups that are stewarding that land right now, and there are many of them, to continue stewarding that land in this interim period, while we're not moving forward towards acquisition. And that was it. And
Is this an open space acquisition, or are we acquiring a cemetery?
We're not doing either at this time.
Well, how about if I want to do something? It's not open space. It's not open space. It's whether we acquire a cemetery.
Right.
People can go to court and make us acquire it, right?
They can.
They can.
It's
And we're
not.
hoping
I don't know
that
why
that
having a
won't
big
happen.
discussion about open space, whether we should buy this open space. It's not open space. It's a cemetery.
Well, and that is the
are we going to
conclusion
take
that
care of
came
it or
out of
not?
the Open Space Committee. But I will say that in many communities, cemeteries are considered passive open space, and they are used as passive open space. So
What do you do? Visit the graves?
there are paths and sitting meditation spots and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I want this to become part of the record, so I think the appropriate thing to do would be to motion that this report be accepted into the record and attached to the minutes of today's meeting. Procedurally, does that?
That sounds fine.
So that way, in the future, we have this as the basis to make decisions from.
I'll second that.
Okay, any commissioner comment on this issue?
I think we should acquire it now. I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, my comment is that, not that we need more liability and more responsibility, but this cemetery is abandoned, and it really was a huge eyesore for the neighborhood. And I appreciate all those who came out and worked. There were individuals and companies that came out and volunteered their time and literally turned this over, cleaned it up, and it is very presentable now, but we're headed into the growing season. And I think we need to come up with a policy about this, and we need to discuss this. I'm not going to try to do it tonight, but we need to look at this. It's not necessarily under the purview of Open Space Committee, but from a township administratively, we have to look at this.
Well, it's also, John, that's one of the reasons that this recommendation came from Open Space, is to allow us to integrate this into the Open Space plan. Because there are other communities, and you have in your ward a potential that could end up that way.
That's right, that's right.
So we need to address historical cemeteries, and
Right.
that will be done as part of the open space plan
Okay, good,
update.
good. And in the meantime...
We don't have to do anything. The group
Well,
will
we don't
still
have
get
to
in
do
there.
anything.
Right, I mean, that group has already, we've consulted with that group.
Great.
They plan to be in there and keep it clean.
Okay. Well, that's good news. One thing I did hear...
Marty left.
I don't know, I'll just put it out there, is that apparently this is not a uncommon issue, and some municipalities are turning to very small, fully managed sheep herds, where they actually bring a consultant in at a very low fee, and they have a fence, and they bring, this is interesting, they bring sheep in who are very good at trimming grass around gravestones, apparently, and there's some advantage to this, is that...
Do you think those sheep would also chase geese?
They may.
We could get rid of
we could
the
solve
geese
a couple
guys.
issues here. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but this ends up being a very good application, so.
You can't leave yet, Hank. We still got a
Hank's
couple
leaving
more
'cause
votes.
I got a real job I got to go to.
All right, Hank, thank you. All right, well, I'll leave it at that, but I have no further comment.
Moved and
We have a
seconded.
motion on the table to accept this memorandum from the Open Space Committee. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment
I think,
on that?
I think the amendment was not only to accept it, but to attach it to the minutes.
Yeah, all we're doing is attaching it to, accepting it and attaching it to the minutes to
Okay.
make it part of the permanent record.
Okay, that's, all right, that's fine. All those, any public comment on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 5-1.
Next
Noted.
item is Resolution 2011-54 for the DCNR Darby Creek
Can I just make a,
headwaters.
to make the minutes easy, John Fisher, you want to just
Yes.
recite who voted?
Commissioner
who-
Curley, motion. Commissioner Nagel, second. Vote was 5-1. Commissioner Mahoney was absent.
Who was the?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Spengler.
Commissioner Spengler opposed.
If you folks remember, we, a couple years ago, had put in partnership with NLT, grant under this exact same title. However, due to inaction, that grant expired. All we're doing here is granting authority for the township manager to sign a new grant application so we can reinitiate this process.
Move the approval of the resolution.
Second.
Commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Noting Commissioner Spengler's motion and Commissioner Nagel's second.
Next is Resolution 2011-50, authorization for change orders and proposals for additional work at the Willows Cottage Energy Efficient and Restoration Sustainability Project. This is cleanup stuff. It's detailed in the package, and I would move the introduction, or the approval of this resolution.
Second?
Commissioner comment?
John, is this finished, the project? The grant, I mean?
It's pretty close.
I think they're in
Still a couple punch list items, but not many. And if you get a chance to get over there, go over and see the work. It's absolutely fantastic.
All right, any public comment on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0, noting Commissioner Mahoney's absence on the vote. Commissioner Nagel moved, Commissioner Spengler second. Library, Commissioner Schaefer. Okay, good. Public Health, it looks like Section 115 Animals is going to be back in Board of Health. They have some edits they would like to make and then bring to the board. Any old business? Any new business? Public participation.
30 seconds.
We're charging by the minute.
You already used up your time, Jim.
Can I request that someone bring a Robert's Rules of Order or whatever you use, please, to the meetings?
The manager gave us all a copy.
We've got a solicitor and we have a copy.
Thank
We
you.
all have copies.
You have one at least? I wanted to, it was about the minutes, so I waited all these hours. Could I please request that the minutes of the March 14th meeting clarify the discussion about room rental? Someone apparently stated that there is that the American Family Association of Pennsylvania has a $3.4 million budget. Could it state who said that? And I wish they would stand corrected, that they're in the far realm of imagination as to the budget.
You need to get hold of Google.
And has
Make a
this-
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Whoa, hang on now. Guys,
John, what was
now, hold on. I appreciate that, but,
Sorry, Bennett.
John, I didn't hear you. A loophole?
Jim, we'll take a look at the minutes.
That's what Google says.
We'll take a look at the minutes. We're not transcribing commissioner comment in the minutes. We are trying to capture the essence of public comment, though, in the minutes. We're spending 40 to 50 hours a week doing minutes now, so we really can't afford to
I agree.
transcribe everything that is said. So I appreciate your
Could you strike
request.
it, maybe?
You can review the video. It is available online at the website, and also, I imagine there's copies at the library, too.
Thank you.
Okay, Baron, you want to come up?
I guess, though, his point does have merit if it's a factually inaccurate
Yes.
statement.
I mean, and
So if you could, Bob, if you could just have somebody
If a
confirm
commissioner
that.
says it doesn't have to be right.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be factual. It's an opinion.
Yeah, but again,
But they're not a verbatim comment for everything.
No, but in tonight's public comments, we can have Jim's comment.
Yes. So, yeah. Baron.
Baron Gemmer, South Wayne. 4 very quick points, hopefully. First, to put your mind at ease about the lot line change and lot consolidation, the version you were looking at is the original version that went to planning. Your concerns were addressed, Commissioner Fisher, in terms of B being split out. That's essentially what C is. Your C and D became a C with an or in it. So those were, matter of fact, you riled Susan Stern so much, that's why she came in. But that should be taken care of. An issue I brought up before last year, and I believe Commissioner Schaefer addressed this because the season was going to be over, but at the last Planning Commission meeting last Monday, and again tonight, you can't find a parking spot. Is there anything we can do about that? When these meetings coincide, there's just no place out there to park. And here we are in April, started April 4th, today being April 11th now. The season's got a ways to go, I assume. North Wayne Garage, and maybe we should run a shuttle. I bring that up because if we have a very large, I mean, not that there wasn't a large amount of people to begin with, but if we have a larger group, it'll be very tough.
To a meeting, there'd be plenty of parking.
I knew you were going to bring that up. I knew you were going to bring that up. My third comment relates to well, Commissioner Schaefer, not to pick on you, but you said you watched the Planning Commission meeting. I want to just clarification on the guideline or the procedure in terms of not allowing public comment on sketch plans at the Planning Commission meeting, because I think it does a disservice to both the applicant as well as the Planning Commission, because they're not getting they're trying to make recommendations to come back on a preliminary plan or a final plan, whatever the case might be. And in the instance in this case, it was put up and said, here are 2 plans, one which I'll characterize as a scare plan, and then an alternative. And they were said that both were by right, which was obviously not correct, but the Planning Commission would never get that information because the public was not allowed to speak. So I use that as an example, but more to my point is, where is the procedure that says the public should not be able to comment on that? Because it is a deliberation by the Planning Commission in terms of giving a recommendation.
Yeah, I don't want to
John-
extend this.
John,
Yeah, I want to
well,
ask John
I
Rice.
mean, no action taken, right?
Right, public comment has to occur before a vote on anything. And then what other public comment is permitted is really up to the individual board. You can have it at the beginning on any agenda item, you can have it like we had tonight, and you can have it at the end on any topic whatsoever. But it's really up to the boards to decide that. The Sunshine Act requires that you provide it before there's an official vote.
And I understand that, and it actually may not even be applicable down at the advisory board like that. It was just more the policy in terms of, I don't think it's the Planning Commission chair that's making that decision. He's basically saying this is a guideline that's always been in place, and I want to know why we have that in place and why wouldn't that change? Because more to your point too, there's public participation at the end of Planning Commission, but I've seen the public actually cut off when they tried to talk about a sketch plan that was presented before. They wouldn't even let them do that in general public participation.
Do you mind if I just interrupt you here before you get to your next point? I have to say, when I was watching that meeting, I agree with you. As a matter of practice, it is, I would think, helpful for the applicant to hear the public's initial reaction. And I wondered myself why, what that was all about. It sounded to me like the chair of the Planning Commission was under the impression, which is probably right, that there was a policy adopted by this board saying no public comment at sketch plan stage.
Just give some background. When I was on Planning Commission, the boards made their own decision regarding public comment on sketch plans. Some of the years we had it, and some of the years we didn't. When we didn't have it, it was because there was a belief that applicants would want to come and speak to the Planning Commission and not be bogged down by, for example, the idea was there's the group in the public, you can meet in the back and speak to them. You can get their input informally, but this was the idea to come to speak to the commissioners. So my opinion is that it should be at the discretion of the boards themselves and not directed from us.
I completely disagree with that. So this board has the right to set administrative policy. We also have the right to create a handbook that will provide to all of our boards and commissions and set policy. And just in that one instant, I had about 6 to 7 residents that came out for an item on that agenda. I gave them bad information. I told them they would be able to speak at that meeting. I didn't realize there was a prohibition of speaking on sketch plans. They stayed at the
Apparently
meeting.
what we're saying is there is no prohibition. Somebody made a decision at the.
Yes. Well, that's the point. If I didn't even know the rule, how could a resident know
Well,
the
but that's
rule?
not,
So,
but you
know,
just
here I
stated that
am.
there is a prohibition. There is no prohibition, and I guess we should just inform
So,
the chair that there is no prohibition.
We can talk to the chair. I mean, it seems to me that whether it's at the beginning or the end, and I think that planning commission meeting went to midnight, didn't it?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that had something to do with it too. But at the beginning or the end, there ought to be some opportunity to comment on anything, including a sketch plan or including the weather or whatever you want to comment on within the bounds and within some kind of a time frame.
Just to clarify, at the begin, and this is not on the planning commission or its current chair, because they're just kind of following, they're not making these rules up as they go, they're kind of following what they think. But at the beginning of that meeting, at 7 o'clock, it was stated there, if you were here for the sketch plan, there'd be no comment. So it wasn't the length of meeting that got into that. And I've seen shorter meetings, not this particular one, where a resident was trying to, again, during general public participation, trying to say something about that. And so it's kind of, it's taboo to say anything about something that was part of a sketch plan at that meeting, period. That's what's happened.
And I don't, that doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I think that's a misapplication of, you know, the fact that we're not required to take public comment is not the same thing as prohibiting public comment on something that is a sketch plan. So, I think we'll have John Rice look at that and advise us and advise the Planning Commission on what they could do. It ultimately may be up to the chair of that commission right now. But again, the Board of Commissioners can set administrative code policy, and we could put it into administrative code if we want to ensure public comment at all of our boards and commission meetings, regardless of what's being voted on.
Thank you. My last point, I just want to put a plug in for our South Wayne traffic calming. I understand that one of the things we might be able to do on South Wayne, being a state road, is put crosswalks in, independent of an effort to put some stop signs in that we're looking at, but particularly at Autobahn, that would be a great calming measure. So I know that that's being worked on. I just want to get it out there in front of you, but one of the few things we might be able to do, in addition to the bulb outs at Conestoga and South Wayne, which I understand was supposed to go in today and didn't, so hopefully that'll be going in sometime soon, but they did move the speed limit sign. So, thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Any second?
No, I think
Second.
All right. We're adjourned.